They called her the mistake bride, a woman no one wanted, sent across the frontier wrapped in lies. Lian Zhou stepped off that train expecting rejection, maybe even violence. What she got was worse, cold acceptance from a man who looked at her like damaged goods he was stuck with. But when that creek tried to swallow his daughter whole, when the water turned black with rage and the whole town watched him fail, she didn't hesitate. She dove in. And everything they thought they knew about the unwanted woman? Dead wrong. Stick around to see how far this story travels. Drop a comment with your city. I want to see where you're watching from. Hit that like button, and let's get into this. The matchmaker's photograph was a lie. Lian Zhou knew this the moment her sister-in-law Mai Feng had snatched it from her hands 3 months ago, eyes glittering with something cruel. The woman in that picture, smooth-faced, delicate, properly beautiful. That wasn't Lian. That was her cousin Jiao, borrowed for an afternoon, dressed in Lian's clothes, positioned just right for the camera, while Lian herself was conveniently sent to the market. "This will do," Mi Feng had announced, sliding the photograph into an envelope addressed to some ranch in Montana territory. "The American won't know the difference until it's too late, and by then, well, you'll be his problem, not ours." Lian had stood there in her family's courtyard in San Francisco's Chinatown, birthmark burning on her left cheek like a brand, and said nothing. What was there to say? Her father had died 2 years ago. Her brother had inherited everything. Mai Feng ran the household now, and Mai Feng had decided the unmarriageable daughter was an expensive burden. Better to ship her off to some desperate frontier rancher who'd advertised for a Chinese bride, sight unseen. The transaction was simple. He needed help on his ranch and a mother for his child. They needed Lian gone. So here she was, 3 months later, stepping off the Northern Pacific Railway onto a platform that barely deserved the name. Ironwood Hollow, Montana Territory. Population? Not enough to matter. The train hissed behind her, eager to leave. Couldn't blame it. The platform was just rough-cut lumber, weathered gray. Beyond it stretched nothing, honest to God, nothing. Grassland rolled toward distant mountains in every direction, broken only by scattered buildings that looked like they'd been thrown there by an angry hand. The sky was enormous, bigger than any sky had a right to be, pressing down with a weight that made her lungs work harder. The air smelled like dust and distance. "You Miss Joe?" Lian turned. The man standing 10 feet away wasn't what she'd expected. The matchmaker had described him as established and respectable. What Lian saw was a wall of a human being, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing work clothes that had seen better years, maybe better decades. His face was weathered like the platform. Too much sun, too much wind, too much of whatever this country threw at people. Dark hair needed cutting, jaw needed shaving, eyes were gray, flat, assessing her the way you'd assess a horse at auction. Those eyes lingered on her birthmark, just for a second, but she caught it. "Yes," Lian said. Her English was accented but clear. She'd spent 2 years in the mission school before her father's business collapsed. "I am Lian Zhou. Caleb Vance." He didn't offer his hand, didn't smile, just stood there, looking at her like she was a problem he was trying to figure out how to solve. "You got luggage?" "One trunk." He grunted, moved past her to where the station attendant was unloading freight, grabbed her trunk, the one that held everything she owned, like it weighed nothing, and hauled it toward a wagon hitched to 2 horses that looked as unimpressed with life as their owner. Lian followed, her travel bag clutched in both hands. The wagon was functional. That was the kindest word for it. Rough wood, no paint, splinters waiting to happen. Caleb tossed her trunk in the back with less ceremony than the railroad had used, then stood there, clearly waiting for her to figure out how to climb up. She managed it, barely. The dress she was wearing, her best one, saved for this arrival, wasn't designed for scrambling into ranch wagons. By the time she settled onto the bench seat, she'd collected a splinter and lost whatever dignity she'd been trying to maintain. Caleb swung up beside her, took the reins, and got the horses moving without a word. They rolled through what passed for Ironwood Hollow's main street. 3 blocks of buildings, half of them looking abandoned. A general store with a crooked sign. Something that might have been a saloon. A church with peeling paint. A few people on the boardwalk stopped to stare as the wagon passed. Lian kept her eyes forward. She could feel their looks anyway, could practically hear their thoughts. The silence stretched, the wagon creaked, The horse's hooves made dull sounds on the dirt road. Finally, Caleb spoke. Picture didn't look like you. There it was, fast at least. Lian had been wondering how long it would take. No, she said, it would not. That normal? Sending a different woman than the one in the photograph? I did not send the photograph. My family did. They know what you look like? Yes. Another silence. Longer this time. They were leaving the town behind now, heading into open country. The road, if you could call it that, was just wheel ruts through grass. You know what I look like? Lian asked. Might as well get this conversation over with. Had a general idea. And now? Caleb didn't answer right away. He kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the reins. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, resigned. Now I know your family's liars. Guess that's useful information. It wasn't anger. That would have been better, somehow. Cleaner. This was just acceptance. Like he'd ordered one thing and received another and was too tired to send it back. You want to know about this? Lian touched her left cheek, where the birthmark spread from temple to jaw, a dark purple stain that looked, people had told her, like spilled wine. Don't matter. It matters to some people. I ain't some people. Lian studied him. His profile was hard, carved from stone. Not handsome, too rough for that, but solid, like something that wouldn't break easy. Why did you want a Chinese bride? She asked. Answered an advertisement. There are women here, white women. Not many, and the ones that are here, he stopped, jaw working. Already tried the normal way, didn't take. You were married before? Yeah. What happened? His hands tightened on the reins. She left. The way he said it, flat, final, told Lian that was all she'd get on that subject. They rode in silence for another mile. 2. The landscape didn't change, just grass and sky and nothing. How far is your ranch? Lian asked. About 3 miles from town. We're halfway. What is it called? Don't have a name. Just the Vance place. You have cattle? Some. Horses, mostly. Sell to the army when they need mounts. He glanced at her. You know anything about ranching? No. Cooking? Yes. Cleaning? Yes. Kids? Lian hesitated. I helped raise my younger cousins. How many? 4. They survive? Yes. Then you know more than nothing. He shifted on the seat. Got a girl, Mara. She's 7, doesn't talk much. Is she ill? No, just quiet, been that way since her mother left. Lian absorbed this. A silent child and a man who clearly had no interest in conversation. She was starting to understand what her new life would look like. What will you tell people? She asked. About me not looking like the photograph? Nothing. They will notice. Let them notice. They will talk. Caleb's jaw tightened. People always talk, doesn't mean I gotta listen. The ranch appeared gradually. First a fence line, then a barn that had seen better days, then a house that looked like it was held together by stubbornness and habit. Single story, wood frame, gray from weather. A porch that sagged on one side. Windows that needed washing. Behind it, more emptiness. Grassland rolled toward mountains that looked purple in the distance. The sky was still enormous, still crushing. Caleb pulled the wagon up in front of the house and set the brake. This is it, he said. Statement, not apology. Lian climbed down, not waiting for help this time. Her legs were stiff from the ride. Her dress had collected dust from the road. She looked at the house, her new home, apparently, and tried to feel something other than numb. The front door opened. A small figure emerged onto the porch. Dark hair in tangles, dress that hung too loose, bare feet despite the cooling afternoon. She stood there, one hand on the doorframe, watching them with eyes that were too old for her face. Mara, Caleb said. Not loud, but the girl's attention snapped to him. This is Miss Zhou. She's going to be staying with us. The child said nothing, just stared at Lian with an expression that was neither welcoming nor hostile, just empty. Lian tried a smile. Hello, Mara. No response. She don't talk much, Caleb said again, like repetition would make it normal. He grabbed Lian's trunk from the wagon. Come on, I'll show you inside. The house was exactly what Lian expected after seeing the outside. Functional, neglected, and profoundly lonely. The main room held a table, chairs, a stove that had grease caked around the burners. Dishes were piled in a basin. The floor needed sweeping, maybe burning. "There's 2 bedrooms," Caleb said, nodding toward a short hallway. "Mara's got one. You can have the other." "Where do you sleep?" He gestured toward a corner where a bedroll was shoved against the wall. "Here." So, not even pretending this was a real marriage. Fair enough. Caleb set her trunk down with a thud. "You hungry?" "A little." "There's bread, some dried beef." He moved toward the kitchen area, clearly uncomfortable. "I ain't much of a cook." "I can see that." He shot her a look, quick, sharp. Then something that might have been the ghost of humor crossed his face. "Yeah, well, that's why you're here, ain't it?" "Among other reasons." "What other reasons?" Lian met his eyes, gray, flat, guarded. "My family wanted me gone. You needed help. It is a practical arrangement." "That's a cold way to put it." "Would you prefer I lie and say I came here for love?" Caleb's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "No, I don't prefer lies." "Then we understand each other." They stood there in the dim main room, 2 strangers bound by necessity and paperwork, and the silence stretched between them like the grassland outside, vast, empty, and honest. Mara had disappeared. Lian could hear small footsteps in one of the bedrooms. "I should unpack," Lian said finally. "Yeah." Caleb moved toward the door. "I got work to finish in the barn." "You need anything?" "I will manage." He nodded, started to leave, then stopped, turned back. "Look, I know this ain't what you signed up for, picture or no picture, and I know I ain't much of a prize. I did not ask for a prize." "What did you ask for?" Lian considered the question. What had she asked for? Safety, maybe? Distance from Maifeng's cruelty. A place where she wasn't constantly reminded that she was unwanted. "A chance," she said finally. "I asked for a chance." Caleb studied her for a long moment, then nodded, once, sharp. "Yeah, all right, that I can do." He left, boots heavy on the porch steps. Lian stood alone in the dim house, listening to the silence. It was different from the silence in her brother's home, that had been cold, hostile, weighted with judgment. This was just empty, like the house itself had given up expecting anything better. She moved to her trunk, opened it, and began unpacking. Her clothes were few, practical. She'd left behind anything decorative. There was no point bringing silk to a ranch. At the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in cloth, was the only photograph she'd kept. Her father, stern-faced, standing outside his import shop. Before the business failed. Before the drinking started. Before he died and left her to Maifeng's mercy. Lin set it on the small table beside the bed in what was now her room. Then she went to explore the rest of the house. The kitchen was worse up close. Grease everywhere. Dishes crusted with food. The stove looked like it hadn't been properly cleaned in months. Maybe years. Caleb had clearly been surviving, not living. Mara's room was neat in a sad way. Everything in its place, nothing out of order, like the child was trying to impose control on the one space she had. A small bed with a threadbare blanket. A shelf with 3 books. A rag doll that looked handmade, one button eye missing. The girl herself was sitting on the bed, watching Lian from the doorway. "I am not here to hurt you," Lian said softly. Mara said nothing. "I know this is strange, a stranger in your home. But I will try—" Lian stopped. Promises were dangerous. "I will try not to make things worse." Still nothing. But the child's eyes, dark brown like her father's should be, but weren't, tracked Lian's every movement. Lian left her alone. The sun was setting when Caleb came back in, smelling like horses and hay. He looked surprised to find Lian in the kitchen, already working. "What are you doing?" "Cooking." "You don't gotta—" "Yes, I do, unless you want to eat dried beef again." He grunted, moved to the basin to wash his hands. The water that came out was rust-colored. He noticed Lian looking. "Well, water's clean. Pipes are old, that's all." "Everything here is old." "Yeah." He dried his hands on his pants. "Place needs work. I know that." Lian had found rice in the pantry, probably left by whoever had stocked this kitchen last, and some vegetables that were only slightly questionable. Not much, but enough to make something that wasn't dried meat. Mara emerged when the food was ready, drawn by the smell. She slid into a chair without being asked, eyes on the bowl Lian set in front of her. They ate in silence. Caleb and Mara apparently saw no reason for table conversation. Fair enough. Lian was too tired for forced pleasantries anyway. The food disappeared quickly. Mara ate like she was afraid someone would take it away. Caleb ate mechanically, efficiently, the way you'd feed a horse. When they were done, Mara took her bowl to the basin without being asked, then disappeared back to her room. Caleb stood, stretched. That was good. Better than I've had in a while. The bar was not high. Another ghost of humor crossed his face. No, I guess it wasn't. He moved toward his corner, started arranging his bedroll. Lian cleaned up, washing the dishes in the rust-tinged water, setting them to dry. The domesticity of it felt strange, wrong, somehow, like she was play-acting at being a wife without any of the actual connection. You need anything before... Caleb gestured vaguely at the bedroom hallway. No. All right. He settled onto his bedroll, boots still on. Holler if you do. Lian went to her room, closed the door, and sat on the bed. Her bed. In her room. In a house in Montana Territory, with a man she'd met 4 hours ago and a silent child who looked at her like a ghost. This was her life now. She should feel something. Fear, maybe. Regret. Anger at her family for sending her here, but all she felt was tired. Lian lay down, still in her dress, and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the wind picked up, making the house creak. The sound was lonely. Everything here was lonely. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. The next morning started with roosters that Lian hadn't known existed. The noise was obscene, aggressive, demanding, right outside her window. She dragged herself up, changed into a simpler dress, and emerged to find Caleb already gone and Mara sitting at the table with a piece of bread. Good morning, Lian tried. Mara chewed her bread, said nothing. Right, this again. Lynn started coffee. The pot was ancient but functional, and took stock of the kitchen in daylight. It was somehow worse than she'd thought. Grime in every corner. The floor was sticky in places. She was afraid to look too closely at what was growing in some of the containers. She spent the morning cleaning. Not because anyone asked, but because she couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand sitting still in this place that felt like it was dying by inches. Mara watched her for a while, then disappeared outside. By noon, Lian had made progress. The stove was cleaner. The dishes were all washed. The floor had been swept and scrubbed twice. She was working on the windows when Caleb came back in. He stopped in the doorway, looking around like he'd walked into the wrong house. You been cleaning all morning? Yes. You didn't have to... I know, I wanted to. He moved to the stove, poured himself coffee from the pot she'd kept warm, studied her over the rim of his cup. Why? Why what? Why you want to clean a house that ain't yours? Lian set down her rag. It is mine now, whether I want it to be or not. So I might as well make it livable. Fair enough. He drank his coffee, still watching her. You always this... He searched for the word. Direct? Would you prefer I pretend to be something else? No, I told you, I don't like lies. Then yes, I am always this direct. My family called it a character flaw. Your family sounds like they were idiots. The comment surprised her. Not the sentiment, she agreed, but the fact that he'd said it out loud. They were complicated, Lian said. Complicated people don't ship their daughter across the country with a fake photograph. No, I suppose they do not. Caleb set down his cup. Look, I ain't good at this, any of this, but I figure we should set some things straight. All right. This arrangement, it's legal and all. We got the paperwork, but I ain't expecting anything from you. You got your room. I got mine. Mara's got hers. We eat, we work, we get by. That's all I'm asking. What about the town? They will expect a normal marriage. Let them expect whatever they want, ain't their business. And if they make it their business? His jaw tightened. Then I'll handle it. Lynn studied him. This man who barely talked, who slept on the floor of his own house, who looked at the world like it was something to endure rather than enjoy. "Why did you really want a bride?" she asked. "Told you." "Need help on the ranch?" "No, there is more. You could hire help. You do not need a wife for that." Caleb was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Mara needs a mother. I can't give her that. Tried. Don't know how. Thought maybe—" He stopped, started again. "Thought maybe someone else could. But you do not want a real marriage." "Didn't say that." "You sleep on the floor of your own house." "That's temporary, just until—" He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Hell, I don't know. Until things settle, I guess." "Things will not settle on their own. You have to make them settle." "Yeah, and how do I do that?" Lian didn't have an answer. She was still figuring that out herself. The door banged open and Mara ran in, eyes wide, gasping. Caleb was on his feet instantly. "What's wrong?" The girl pointed outside, frantic. "Show me," Caleb said, already moving. Lian followed them out, across the yard toward the barn. Mara led them inside to one of the stalls. A horse was down. Big chestnut mare lying on her side, breathing hard. Too hard. Caleb swore, dropped to his knees beside her. "She was fine this morning. I checked her." He ran his hands over the horse's side, gentle despite his rough appearance. The mare's breathing was labored, painful to hear. "Colic," Caleb muttered. "Damn it, must have got into something." "What can I do?" Lian asked. "Nothing. Just—" He caught himself. "Get me a bucket of water, and find any mineral oil in the supply room. Brown bottle." Lian moved fast. Found the water, found the bottle. When she came back, Caleb was trying to get the horse up. "Come on, girl. Can't let you stay down." "Come on." The mare didn't want to move. Didn't have the strength. Between the three of them, Caleb pulling, Lian pushing, Mara making encouraging noises, they got the horse to her feet. Barely. Caleb dosed her with the oil, kept her moving, walking her in slow circles despite her protests. Lian stayed close, ready to help if the mare went down again. An hour passed. Then 2. The sun moved across the sky. Finally, the mare's breathing eased. She lowered her head, snorted, and Caleb let out a breath he'd been holding. "That's it. You're all right. You're all right." He leaned against the stall wall, exhausted. Lian realized she was exhausted too. Mara was sitting in the straw, watching the horse with fierce concentration. "Will she be okay?" Lian asked. "Should be. Long as she doesn't relapse." He looked at Lian, really looked at her. "You didn't have to help." "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because she needed it. Because you asked. Because—" Lian stopped. "Because sitting in that house doing nothing felt like drowning. Because I could." Caleb nodded slowly. "Thank you." It was the first time he'd thanked her for anything. They walked back to the house together as the sun set. Mara ran ahead. Caleb moved slower, favoring his left leg. "Are you hurt?" Lian asked. "Old injury. Acts up sometimes." "From what?" "Horse threw me couple years back. Landed wrong." "You should rest it." "Can't. Work doesn't stop because I'm sore." They reached the porch. Caleb stopped, looked at her in the fading light. "You did good today." "With the horse. With—" He gestured at the house. "Everything." "I cleaned and helped with an animal. That is not impressive." "It is to me." The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. "I'm just trying to be useful," Lian said. "You are. More than you know." He went inside, leaving her on the porch with those words hanging in the air. Lian stood there for a moment, looking out at the darkening grassland, at the vast Montana sky, at this place that was supposed to be her home now. Maybe it could be. Eventually. She went inside to start dinner. The days began to blur together after that. Wake, cook, clean, help where needed, sleep. Repeat. The work was endless. Caleb was gone most days from dawn until dusk, dealing with horses and fences and 100 other things that kept a ranch running. Mara ghosted through the house like she wasn't sure she was allowed to exist. Lian fell into the rhythm of it. Not happily. There was no happiness here yet, but competently. She could do competent. The house slowly stopped looking like it wanted to die. Walls got washed, floors got cleaned, windows started letting in actual light. Caleb noticed but didn't comment, just gave her those quick, assessing looks that meant he saw what she was doing. Mara was harder to reach. The child watched everything, but participated in nothing. Lian tried conversation, got silence, tried games, got stares, tried just existing in the same space, and that seemed to work better. At least Mara stopped running away when Lian entered a room. Small victories. 2 weeks after Lian's arrival, Caleb came in from the north pasture looking grim. "Need to go into town tomorrow," he said. "Get supplies. You want to come?" Lian considered it. She'd been avoiding Ironwood Hollow since that first ride through, but she couldn't hide forever. "Yes." "Might not be pleasant. People will stare." "People always stare." He grunted acknowledgement. "All right. We leave early. Bring Mara." The next morning, they took the wagon into town. Mara sat between them, silent as always, and Lian tried not to feel like she was being led to execution. Ironwood Hollow looked exactly the same. 3 blocks of barely there civilization clinging to existence. The wagon rolled down the main street and heads turned. Of course they did. Caleb pulled up in front of the general store. "I'll get the feed and hardware. You get whatever you need for the house." "And Mara?" He looked at his daughter, who was staring at the store window with something almost like interest. "She can go with you, if that's all right." "Of course." They climbed down. Caleb headed toward the feed depot. Lian took Mara's hand. The girl allowed it, which felt like progress, and walked into the general store. The conversation stopped the moment they entered. 3 women were clustered near the fabric section. They looked at Lian, at Mara, and their faces did that thing faces do when they're trying not to look judgmental while being completely judgmental. "Well," one of them said. An older woman, gray hair in a tight bun, wearing a dress that had seen better days but was still better than anything Lian owned. "You must be Caleb's new bride." The pause before bride was deliberate. "Yes," Lian said. "I am Lian Zhou." "Martha Hendricks." The woman's eyes traveled over Lian's face, lingering on the birthmark. "We heard Caleb had sent for a Chinese bride. Didn't expect—" Another pause. "Well, welcome to Ironwood Hollow." The other 2 women murmured agreement that sounded more like disapproval. "Thank you," Lian said, keeping her voice even. She moved toward the shelves, Mara still holding her hand, started selecting what they needed: sugar, flour, coffee, basic things. The women's voices followed her. "Not at all what the photograph showed, I heard." "Poor man, getting swindled like that." What was he thinking? Marrying sight unseen. Lian's hands tightened on a can of beans. Mara looked up at her, eyes wide. "It is fine," Lian whispered to the girl. "Ignore them." But ignoring them was like ignoring a toothache. Possible, but it still hurt. She brought her items to the counter. The shopkeeper, a thin man with apologetic eyes, tallied them up without comment. "That'll be $3.40. "Put it on Caleb's account?" "Yes, please." "Sure thing, Mrs. Vance." Mrs. Vance. The name felt foreign, wrong. The women were still watching, still whispering. One of them, younger, blonde, pretty in a washed-out way, spoke louder than the others. "I heard she doesn't even speak English properly." Lian turned, looked the blonde woman dead in the eye. "My English is fine, but thank you for your concern." The woman's face flushed. Her companions looked scandalized. Lian gathered her items and walked out, Mara hurrying to keep up. Outside, she nearly ran into a man coming up the steps. He was younger than Caleb, better dressed, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Whoa there," he said, stepping aside. Then he saw her face, and the smile changed, became calculating. "You must be Caleb's bride. Heard he'd sent for one." "Yes. James Cartwright. I own the saloon." He tipped his hat. "Welcome to town." "Thank you. Must be quite an adjustment, coming all the way from China to—" He gestured at the town. "This." "I am from San Francisco." "Ah. Still. Quite a journey." His eyes went to Mara, who was half hiding behind Lian's skirt. "And you're taking care of little Mara now. That's good. Girl needs a mother figure." Something about the way he said it made Lian's skin crawl. "If you will excuse us." "Of course. I'm sure I'll see you around." He smiled again, that empty smile, and walked past into the store. Caleb was loading the wagon when Lian and Mara returned. He took one look at Lian's face and his expression darkened. What happened? Nothing. Don't lie. What happened? Some women in the store. They were talking. Lian handed him the items she'd purchased. It does not matter. Like hell it doesn't. He finished loading, then turned to face the store. Which ones? Caleb, it is fine. Which ones, Lian? She told him. He looked ready to march back in there, and something in her chest tightened at the thought. Do not, she said. It will only make things worse. Can't get much worse? Yes, it can. Trust me. He stood there, jaw working, clearly torn between his anger and her request. Finally, he let out a breath. Get in the wagon. They rode home in silence. Mara dozed against Lian's side. Caleb kept his eyes on the road, hands tight on the reins. Finally, he spoke. I'm sorry. For what? For them. For bringing you here to deal with... He gestured vaguely. All this. You did not make them cruel. You only gave me a place to go. Yeah, and look how that's working out. Lian looked at him. Really looked. At the tension in his shoulders, the guilt in his eyes. This man who'd taken her in despite the lies, despite everything, and was now blaming himself for other people's ugliness. It is working out fine, she said. You don't have to say that. I am not saying it to make you feel better. I am saying it because it is true. Those women in town, I have dealt with worse. Much worse. At least here I have a purpose. At least here I am not... She stopped. Not what? Not invisible. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then, you could never be invisible. Not the way you work. It wasn't a compliment. Not exactly. But coming from him, it meant something. They reached the ranch. Caleb unloaded while Lian got Mara inside. The girl was exhausted from the trip, the early morning, the stress of town. She went to her room without protest. Lian started on dinner. Caleb came in, put away the supplies, then surprised her by staying in the kitchen. I should have warned you, he said, about the town, about how they'd be. Would it have changed anything? No, but still. Lian cut vegetables, methodical, focused. Tell me about your wife, the one who left. Caleb went still. Why? Because everyone is thinking about her anyway, and I would rather hear the truth from you than gossip from town. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Her name was Elizabeth, town girl. We married young, too young. She hated it here, the isolation, the work. Me, probably. He paused. When Mara was 3, Elizabeth left. Said she was going to visit her sister in Denver. Never came back. Did she take Mara? Tried. I wouldn't let her. His voice was flat. Mara wasn't a toy Elizabeth could pick up and put down when she got bored, so Elizabeth left alone. That is when Mara stopped talking. More or less. She talked some after, but less and less. Now, he shrugged. Now she doesn't talk at all. Have you tried to find Elizabeth? No. Why not? Because she made her choice. He looked at Lian. I don't chase people who don't want to be found. Lian understood that, more than he knew. The town thinks I am your second mistake, she said. The town can think whatever it wants. It bothers you. What bothers me is them treating you like you're less than. Because of a birthmark. Because you're Chinese. Because... He stopped, frustrated. Because they're small-minded idiots. You cannot protect me from idiots. There are too many of them. I can try. Lian set down her knife. Why? You do not owe me protection. We barely know each other. You're my wife. Legally, anyway. Is that the only reason? Caleb met her eyes. No. Then what is the other reason? He was quiet for a long time. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows Lian had cleaned. Because you didn't run, he said finally, when you got here and saw this place. Saw me. Saw what you'd actually signed up for. You didn't run. You just... He gestured at the kitchen, the house. You just started working. Like you belonged here. I have nowhere else to go. That's not it. Plenty of people with nowhere to go still run. You stayed. You're staying. He pushed off the counter. That means something. To me, anyway. He left before she could respond. Went outside to finish the evening chores. Lian stood in the kitchen, alone with her thoughts and half-cut vegetables, trying to understand what had just happened. She was starting to think maybe Caleb Vance wasn't as simple as he pretended to be. 3 days later, everything changed. It started with a knock on the door. Unusual, people didn't just drop by the Vance ranch. Lian answered it to find Martha Hendricks on the porch, looking uncomfortable. "Mrs. Vance, may I come in?" Lian wanted to say no, wanted to shut the door in this woman's face, but curiosity won. "Of course." Martha entered, looking around at the cleaned house with surprise. "My, you've certainly made some changes. The house needed work."
"Yes, I suppose it did." Martha settled into a chair without being asked. "I'll be direct. There's a church social next week. Caleb hasn't attended in years, but I think it would be good for him, for Mara, for you, to be seen as part of the community." "The community that calls me a mistake?" Martha had the grace to look ashamed. "I heard about what happened at the store. I'm sorry. Some of the ladies, well, they're not as Christian as they pretend to be." "Why are you here, Mrs. Hendricks?"
"Because Caleb needs allies, and whether you like it or not, so do you." She leaned forward. "I know what it's like to be an outsider here. I came from Boston 30 years ago. They treated me like a foreigner for a decade, but I survived, and eventually they accepted me. I am not you. No, you're facing harder odds, but that doesn't mean you can't win." She stood. "Come to the social, bring Mara, show them you're not going anywhere." After she left, Lian told Caleb about the visit. His reaction was predictable. "We're not going." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to subject you to more of their judgment." "What if I want to go?" That stopped him. "Why would you want that?" "Because hiding makes them think they have won, and I do not intend to let them win." Caleb studied her, something like respect in his eyes. "You're tougher than you look." "I have to be." They went to the social. All three of them, dressed in their best clothes, which weren't much, but they were clean. The community hall was packed. Families, couples, children running around. Conversation hummed until Caleb walked in with Lian and Mara. Then it died. Every eye turned. Every face registered shock, curiosity, judgment. Caleb's hand found the small of Lian's back. Just for a moment. A silent message. "I'm here." They made their way through the crowd. People parted like water. Some nodded. Most just stared. Martha Hendricks appeared at their side. "Caleb, Lian, I'm so glad you came. Let me introduce you to..." She launched into a round of introductions. Names Lian wouldn't remember. Faces that blurred together. But she smiled, nodded, played the part. Mara stayed glued to her side, overwhelmed. Then James Cartwright approached, all smiles and false warmth.
"Caleb, good to see you out in society." His eyes slid to Lian. "And Mrs. Vance, lovely to see you again."
"Mr. Cartwright, I was just telling some folks about your arrival. Quite the story. Mail-order bride from San Francisco. Must have been quite the surprise for Caleb when you didn't match the photograph." The words landed like stones. People nearby went quiet, listening. Caleb's expression went dangerous. "That's enough, Cartwright. I'm just making conversation."
"No, you're being an ass. There's a difference." "Caleb," Lian put a hand on his arm, but he was done. "My wife looks exactly like she's supposed to look. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me, outside." The threat was clear. The room went completely silent. James Cartwright raised his hands in mock surrender. "No offense meant, just curious how these arrangements work." "They work fine. Now get out of my sight." Cartwright left, smirking. Damage done. The rest of the evening was torture. People kept their distance. Whispers followed them everywhere. Mara looked miserable. Lian wanted to disappear. Finally, Caleb had enough. "We're leaving." No one stopped them. On the wagon ride home, Lian broke the silence. "Thank you for defending me." "Shouldn't have to defend you. They should just act like decent human beings." "The world does not work that way." "It should." Mara had fallen asleep between them, exhausted from the stress.
"I made things worse for you," Lian said, "by being here." "No, they made things worse by being them. You didn't do anything wrong. I exist. That seems to be enough." Caleb looked at her, his face half shadowed in the moonlight. "Then they're the ones with the problem, not you." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to her in a long time. When they got home, Caleb carried Mara inside. Lian followed, grateful to be back in the quiet safety of the ranch. She was learning something. Sometimes home wasn't a place you loved. Sometimes it was just a place where people couldn't hurt you quite as much. For now, that was enough. The week after the social, winter arrived like a fist. Lian woke one morning to find frost covering the windows in patterns that looked almost deliberate. Beautiful if you ignored the fact that the house was freezing and the stove had gone out overnight. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and went to restart it, fingers numb. Caleb was already up. She could hear him outside, breaking ice on the water trough. The sound was sharp, violent in the pre-dawn quiet. Mara emerged from her room, breath visible in the cold air. She looked at Lian, then at the dead stove, and without a word started gathering kindling from the box by the door. They worked together in silence, and within 20 minutes had a fire going. Small progress. But progress. Caleb came in stamping snow off his boots, face red from cold. "Storm's coming, big one. Need to get the horses secured and bring in extra feed." "What can I do?" Lian asked. "Stay inside, keep the fire going, make sure the water pipes don't freeze." He grabbed a piece of bread left from yesterday. "If I'm not back by dark, don't worry." Sometimes these things take longer than expected. He was gone before she could argue. Lian spent the day doing exactly what he'd said, keeping the fire fed, checking the pipes, watching the sky darken with clouds that looked heavy enough to fall. By afternoon, snow was coming down in thick sheets, erasing the landscape. Mara pressed her face to the window, watching it accumulate. "Have you seen snow before?" Lian asked. The girl nodded. "Do you like it?" A shrug, non-committal. But she kept watching, so that meant something. Lian started dinner early, not knowing when Caleb would return. Made extra, just in case. The wind picked up, rattling the house like it wanted inside. The temperature dropped further. Darkness came early. Still no Caleb. Lian tried not to worry. He'd said not to worry, but worry didn't listen to logic. Mara had gone quiet, quieter than usual, curled in a chair near the stove. She kept glancing at the door. "He will be fine," Lian said. "He knows this land." Mara's eyes said she wasn't convinced. Neither was Lian. Another hour passed. The wind became a constant scream. Snow piled against the windows. Lian checked the fire for the 100th time, added more wood, and tried to ignore the knot in her stomach. Then, finally, the door burst open and Caleb stumbled in, covered in snow, ice crusted in his beard. "Jesus," he muttered, shoving the door closed against the wind. "That's bad out there." Lian was already moving, grabbing blankets. "You are frozen." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Sit down." He looked like he might argue, then didn't. Dropped into a chair and let her work, peeling off his frozen coat, his gloves that had ice welded to the leather. Mara brought him coffee without being asked. He took it with shaking hands. "All the horses are secure," he said through chattering teeth. "But we're going to be snowed in for a few days at least. We have enough food? Should. Long as we're careful." He drank the coffee, color slowly returning to his face. "You kept the fire going good. House is warm." "That was the instruction." "Yeah, but..." He looked around, seemed to notice for the first time that dinner was ready, that Mara was hovering nearby, that everything was under control. "You did good." It was becoming a pattern, him saying that. Like he kept being surprised she was competent. They ate dinner while the storm raged outside. Caleb was exhausted, barely keeping his eyes open. When he finished, he went straight to his bedroll without ceremony. "Get some sleep," he mumbled to Lian. "Tomorrow's going to be hard. Storm like this, things break." He was asleep within minutes. Lian cleaned up, banked the fire, made sure Mara got to bed. Then she stood in the main room, listening to the wind try to tear the house apart, and wondered how people survived out here. The answer she was learning was barely. Morning brought strange quiet. The wind had stopped. Lian looked out to see snow piled so high it nearly reached the windows. The world had been erased, replaced with nothing but white. Caleb was already up, assessing the damage. "Barn roof sagging under the weight," he said. "Need to get up there and clear it before it collapses. And the path to the well is completely blocked. I can help dig." "You ever shoveled snow?" "No, but I can learn." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, get dressed warm. This is going to take all day. It took 3 days. 3 days of digging, clearing, hauling. Lian's hands blistered, then bled, then calloused. Her back screamed, her shoulders felt like they'd been beaten with hammers. But she kept going because Caleb kept going, and someone had to. Mara helped where she could, carrying smaller loads, bringing them water, watching for new problems. The girl still didn't talk, but she was there, present, contributing. On the 4th day, the sun came out, brutal and bright against all that white. Caleb stood in the yard, surveying what they'd accomplished. We did it. Barns clear, paths open, animals are fed. We? Lian said. You did most of the work. You did more than most women would have. Most women have not been desperate enough to learn. He glanced at her. That what you are? Desperate? I was. Now I'm just tired. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Yeah, me too. They went inside. Lian made coffee while Caleb collapsed into a chair. Mara climbed into his lap, rare, and he held her with one arm, eyes closed. It was the first time Lian had seen them like that. Father and daughter, unguarded. She missed you, Lian said quietly. When you were outside in the storm, she was worried. Caleb's arm tightened around Mara. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Didn't mean to scare you. Mara buried her face in his shoulder. She doesn't show it much, Caleb continued, speaking to Lian now. But she feels everything. Too much, maybe. Children always do. You have siblings. One brother. He is why I am here. He send you away? His wife did. He allowed it. Lian poured coffee, handed him a cup. Same thing, really. Family's supposed to protect you. Yes, they are supposed to. She sat down across from him. But sometimes they are the ones you need protection from. Caleb studied her over the rim of his cup. You ever talked to them since you left? No. You want to? No. He nodded, accepting that. Good. People who treat you like that don't deserve your time. Mara had fallen asleep in his arms. He shifted carefully, not wanting to wake her. I should put her to bed, he said. Let me. Lian stood, held out her arms. You are exhausted. He hesitated, then transferred the sleeping child to her. Mara barely stirred, just settled against Lian's shoulder like it was natural. Lian carried her to the bedroom, tucked her in, and stood there for a moment watching the girl sleep. She looked peaceful, younger, like maybe everything would be okay. When she came back out, Caleb was standing by the window, staring at the snow-covered land. Thank you, he said without turning. For helping. He gestured vaguely. Everything. You have already thanked me. Yeah, well, bears repeating. Lian moved to stand beside him. Outside, the world was still and frozen and beautiful in a hostile way. This place is hard, she said. Yeah. Does it ever get easier? No, you just get tougher. I am not sure I want to be tougher. I am already hard enough. He looked at her then, really looked. You think you're hard? I know I am. You do not survive what I have survived by being soft. What did you survive? Lian considered not answering, but something about the storm, about the work they'd done together, made her want to tell the truth. My father was a good man when I was young. He ran a successful import business. We had money, status. Then his partner cheated him, stole everything. My father started drinking. Within a year, he drank himself to death. She paused. My mother had died when I was a child, so I went to live with my brother. He was married by then. His wife, Mai Feng, she hated me immediately. Said I was bad luck. That the birthmark was a sign of something wrong inside me. It gets worse. She convinced my brother I was unmarriageable, that I would be a burden forever. So when the opportunity came to send me away, Lian shrugged. She took it. And I let her, because staying was worse than leaving. Caleb was quiet for a long time. I'm sorry. Do not be sorry. Be glad. If Mai Feng had not been cruel, I would not be here. And you want to be here? Lian met his eyes, gray, serious, waiting for the truth. I want to be somewhere I am useful, she said. Somewhere I matter, even a little. So yes, I want to be here. Something shifted in his expression. You matter more than a little. To who? To me.
Tamara. He turned back to the window. This place was dying before you came. I was just going through motions, keeping things running barely. But you made it feel like maybe there was a point to it all. Lian's throat tightened. I just cleaned and cooked. You did more than that. You made it a home again. They stood there in the quiet snowlight reflecting through the window, and Lian felt something she hadn't felt in years, like maybe she belonged somewhere. The feeling didn't last. 2 days later, they needed supplies again. The storm had depleted their stores more than expected. Caleb wanted to go alone, but Lian insisted on coming. We need more than you can carry by yourself, she argued. I can manage. I am coming. He knew better than to fight her by now. They left Mara with Martha Hendricks. The woman had stopped by to check on them after the storm and offered to watch the girl. Mara didn't look thrilled, but she didn't protest either. The ride into town was brutal, cold that cut through every layer, wind that never stopped. By the time they reached Ironwood Hollow, Lian couldn't feel her face. The general store was crowded. Everyone had the same idea after being snowed in. Conversation hummed until Lian walked in with Caleb. Then the familiar silence. She ignored it, moved through the aisles gathering what they needed. Caleb stayed close, a silent presence at her back. They were loading their purchases when James Cartwright appeared, all smiles and poison. Caleb, Mrs. Vance, survived the storm, I see. Barely, Caleb said flatly. I heard your barn roof nearly collapsed. That must have been stressful. Cartwright's eyes slid to Lian. Lucky you had help. Yeah, I was lucky. Though I have to wonder, is it really help if you have to teach someone everything from scratch? Must be exhausting, dealing with someone so inexperienced. Caleb's hands tightened on a bag of flour. Say what you mean, Cartwright. I'm just saying, a man in your position needs a partner who can actually contribute, not a burden who needs constant supervision. Lian contributes more than you ever have. Does she? Cartwright's smile widened, because, from what I hear, she can't even handle basic ranch work without you holding her hand. Lian felt heat rise in her chest. I can handle myself. Can you? Because the ladies' auxiliary has been taking bets on how long before you run back to San Francisco. Let them bet. They will lose their money. Will they? Cartwright leaned in, voice dropping. Or are you just clinging to Caleb because you have nowhere else to go? That's not a marriage. That's charity. Caleb stepped between them, voice deadly quiet. Get away from my wife before I make you regret opening your mouth. Touchy. I'm just making conversation. No, you're being a son of a bitch, and I'm done listening to it. Caleb grabbed their purchases. Lian, let's go. They were almost to the door when Cartwright called out. Must be hard, Caleb, trading one woman who didn't want you for another who's only here because she's got no choice. Caleb turned. Lian had never seen that expression on his face, pure rage, barely controlled. You want to say that again? The store went completely silent. Even Cartwright looked nervous. I'm just pointing out facts. You're pointing out shit you don't know anything about. My marriage is none of your business. Lian is none of your business. And if you ever speak about her like that again, I will personally make sure you regret it. He didn't wait for a response, just grabbed Lian's arm and pulled her outside. On the wagon, he was shaking, not from cold. I'm sorry, Lian said quietly. For what? For causing trouble. For making people talk. People talk no matter what. That's what they do when their own lives are too boring. He got the horses moving, jaw tight. Cartwright's been trying to buy my land for 2 years. I keep saying no. So now he's trying to make my life miserable instead. He wants the ranch? Wants to expand his holdings. Thinks he can pressure me into selling. Caleb's hands were white-knuckled on the reins. But I'm not selling. This land is Mara's future. I'm not giving it up because some asshole can't take no for an answer. They rode in silence for a while. The cold seemed worse now, biting deeper. What he said? Lian started carefully. About me only being here because I have nowhere else to go. Don't. It is true, though, is it not? Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop. Turned to face her, expression fierce. You want the truth? Yeah, you came here because you had limited options. And yeah, I sent for you because I needed help. But that doesn't make this any less real. You work harder than anyone I've ever met. You've made that house livable again.
You've been patient with Mara when I had no idea how to reach her. He stopped, took a breath. You're not Charity. You're the reason things are working. Lian's throat felt tight. I'm just doing what needs to be done. No, you're doing more than that, and anyone who can't see it is an idiot. He got the horses moving again, and they finished the ride in silence. But it was different now, warmer somehow, despite the cold. When they got home, Martha brought Mara out. The girl ran to Lian immediately, wrapped her arms around her waist. Well, Martha said, eyebrows raised. That's new. Lian looked down at Mara, felt something crack open in her chest. The child was holding on like Lian was something worth holding on to. Thank you for watching her, Caleb said. Any time, she was good as gold. Martha paused. I heard what happened at the store. Cartwright running his mouth again. News travels fast. It's a small town. People talk. She looked at Lian. For what it's worth, some of us don't agree with him. Some of us think you're exactly what Caleb needed. After she left, Caleb unloaded while Lian took Mara inside. The girl still hadn't let go. Did something happen while we were gone? Lian asked. Mara shook her head, but she stayed close like she'd been worried. That evening, after dinner, something shifted. Mara brought Lian the book she'd been reading, or pretending to read, and climbed into her lap. Caleb stopped what he was doing, stared. Lian looked down at the girl, at the book, and felt completely out of her depth. You want me to read to you? Mara nodded. So Lian read, stumbled through a story about a rabbit and a fox, her accent making some words awkward. Mara didn't seem to care, just sat there, listening, small body warm against Lian's. When the story ended, Mara looked up at her with those two old eyes and smiled. Small, barely there, but real. Lian's eyes burned. Time for bed. Mara went without protest. Let Lian tuck her in, let Lian brush hair back from her forehead. Good night, Lian whispered. Mara's lips moved. No sound came out, but Lian could read the shape. Good night. When she came back out, Caleb was standing by the stove, looking stunned. She's never done that before, he said. Let someone read to her, smiled like that. Maybe she just needed time. No, she needed you. He ran a hand through his hair. I've been trying for years to reach her. You've been here barely a month and... He stopped, overcome. Lian moved closer. You reached her by bringing me here, by giving her stability, by not giving up. I am just... Don't say you're just anything. You're... He met her eyes. You're everything that's working right now. The space between them felt charged, dangerous. Lian stepped back. I should clean up. Yeah, okay. But he kept watching her as she moved around the kitchen, and she could feel the weight of that gaze. That night, lying in bed, Lian couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts. Too many feelings she didn't know what to do with. She heard movement in the main room. Caleb, still awake. Without thinking it through, she got up and went out. He was sitting at the table, paper spread in front of him, ranch accounts by the look of it. Cannot sleep? She asked, trying to figure out how to make the numbers work. Winter's expensive, and with Cartwright sniffing around, he shook his head. Just need to make it to spring. Sell some horses to the army, then we'll be okay. Can I help? You already are. More than you know. Lian sat down across from him. Tell me about the ranch, how it works. So he did. Explained the horse breeding program, the contracts with the army, the struggles with weather and market prices and competing ranchers. Talked until his voice was hoarse, like he'd been holding this all in for years and finally had someone to tell. Lian listened, asked questions, understood more than he expected. You're smarter than people give you credit for, he said finally. People do not give me credit for anything. I do. Yes, you do. She met his eyes. Why? Because you earned it. Every day you earn it. The moment stretched. Caleb's hand was on the table, close enough to touch. Lian's fingers twitched toward it, then stopped. Not yet. Maybe never. But something was building between them, undeniable. I should let you work, she said, standing. Lian, she stopped, waited. Thank you for listening, for, he gestured at the house, the papers, everything, for being here. Where else would I be? I don't know. but I'm glad it's here. Lian went back to bed, heart hammering, and tried to understand what was happening to her. She'd come here expecting nothing, prepared for hardship and loneliness and work. What she hadn't prepared for was this, the slow build of something that felt like it might matter. The next weeks fell into a new rhythm. Harder work as winter deepened, but easier in other ways. Mara started staying close to Lian, helping with small tasks, even attempting words sometimes, just shapes of sounds, but progress. Caleb stopped sleeping in the main room, started using the third bedroom, the one that had been storage, cleaned it out, moved his things in. Creating distance, maybe. Or creating space for something else. Lian didn't ask, just noticed. The town remained hostile, but she learned to ignore it. Let them talk. Let them judge. She had work to do. Martha became an unexpected ally. Stopped by weekly, brought news, sometimes brought food, started inviting Mara to play with her granddaughter. The girl still didn't talk much, but she was trying. Everything was slow, gradual, nothing dramatic. Until the day Cartwright showed up at the ranch. Lian was alone. Caleb was out checking fence lines. Mara was with Martha. She heard the horse, looked out, and felt ice in her stomach. Cartwright dismounted, all false politeness. "Mrs. Vance, is your husband home?" "No." "That's fine. Maybe I'll wait." He tied his horse, started toward the house. Lian stepped onto the porch, blocking the door. "You are not welcome here." "I'm just here to discuss business." "Caleb is not interested in your business." "That's not what he told me." "He has told you no multiple times. The answer has not changed." Cartwright's smile turned cold. "You know, it's interesting. You act like you have authority here, like you're actually his wife. But we both know the truth, don't we?" "I do not know what you mean." "Come on. Everyone knows. He sleeps in a different room. You barely touch. This isn't a marriage. It's a business arrangement." He stepped closer. "Which means you don't actually have any say in what happens to this ranch." "Get off our property!" "Or what? You'll tell Caleb I was rude to you? He'll get angry, make threats, and then nothing will change. Because at the end of the day, I'm offering him a way out of this mess. Good money for land he's barely holding on to. He will never sell to you. We'll see. Men get desperate when they're drowning." Cartwright moved even closer, too close. "And you might want to start thinking about your options. Because when this place goes under, and it will, you'll be right back where you started. Unwanted, unmarriageable, nothing." Lian's hand found the rifle Caleb kept by the door. She raised it, not quite pointing it at Cartwright, but close enough. "Get off our property." His eyes widened, then he laughed. "You don't even know how to use that. Try me." They stood there, locked in a stare. Finally, Cartwright backed away, hands raised. "All right, I'm going. But you tell Caleb, this offer won't last forever, and when he comes crawling back, the price will be lower." He rode off, and Lian stood on the porch, shaking, rifle still in her hands. When Caleb got home an hour later, she told him everything. His face went dark. "He threatened you. He threatened us. The ranch. Everything." "I'm going into town. I'm going to..." "No." Lian grabbed his arm. "That is what he wants. For you to lose control. To do something that gives him leverage. So I'm supposed to just let him. You are supposed to be smarter than him. You are supposed to protect this ranch by not giving him ammunition." Caleb stared at her, breathing hard. Then slowly, the rage drained, replaced by something else. "You held a rifle on him." "Yes." "You know how to shoot?" "No." "But you..." A laugh burst out of him, shocked and genuine. "You bluffed him." "I did what I had to do." He pulled her into a hug so suddenly she barely had time to react. Just held her, tight, like she was something precious. "You're terrifying," he said into her hair. "You know that? I have been called worse." When he pulled back, his hands lingered on her shoulders. His eyes searched her face. "We're not going to lose this place," he said. "I promise you that. Do not make promises you cannot keep." "I'm not." "We're going to fight together, and we're going to win." The certainty in his voice made her believe it. Made her believe in something she'd stopped believing in long ago, that maybe things could work out. That night, everything felt different, more solid, more real, like they weren't just surviving anymore, like they were actually building something worth fighting for. Spring came late that year, dragging its feet like it didn't want to arrive at all. The snow melted in patches, leaving the ground a mess of mud and ice. The creek that ran through the eastern edge of Caleb's property swelled with runoff, turning from a gentle trickle into something angry and loud. Lian heard it at night, lying in bed. The water sounded like it was arguing with itself. "Creek's high," Caleb said one morning, staring out the window while drinking his coffee. "Higher than I've seen it in years." "Is that dangerous?" Lian asked. "Can be. If it floods, we lose the east pasture, maybe worse." He set down his cup. "Need to ride out and check the banks. Make sure nothing's eroding that shouldn't be." "I will come with you." He looked at her, about to argue, then didn't. They'd gotten past that. Past him treating her like she'd break. "All right, but Mara stays here." The girl looked up from her breakfast, eyes worried. "We will be back before dark," Lian told her. "I promise." Mara nodded, but she didn't look convinced. They rode out mid-morning, Caleb on his roan gelding, Lian on a gentler mare named Sadie. The landscape was transforming, patches of green pushing through dead grass, mud everywhere, water running in streams where there shouldn't be streams. The creek was worse than Caleb had thought, swollen to twice its normal width, moving fast, carrying debris. Tree branches, pieces of fence, things that had no business being in water. Caleb dismounted, walked along the bank, checking for weak spots. Lian stayed on Sadie, watching the water churn. "This is bad," Caleb said finally. "Banks are eroding. We get another big melt, another storm. This whole section could wash out." "What can we do?" "Not much. Reinforce what we can. Hope for the best." He looked upstream, face grim. "Weather turns again, we're in trouble." They worked for hours, moving rocks, trying to shore up vulnerable sections. It felt futile, like trying to negotiate with something that didn't care about negotiation. By the time they headed back, the sun was lower than Caleb had wanted. Lian could feel the temperature dropping. "We should have left earlier," Caleb muttered. "We left when we could." "Yeah, well, Mara's going to be worried." They pushed the horses faster, but the terrain was treacherous. Mud sucked at hooves. Ice hid under innocent-looking puddles. They were halfway home when they heard it, a sound that made Caleb pull up short, face going white. A child screaming, not just any child. Mara. Caleb kicked his horse into a gallop, Lian right behind him. They crashed through brush, jumped a fallen log, came around a bend, and Mara was in the water. The creek had her, was dragging her downstream, her small body tumbling in the current. She'd surface for a second, arms flailing, then go under again. Caleb was off his horse before it stopped moving, running along the bank, trying to get ahead of her. "Mara, hold on!" But the current was faster than he was. Lian watched in horror as the gap widened. Then Caleb did something insane. He dove in. The water swallowed him whole, and for a terrible second Lian thought she'd just lost both of them. Then his head broke the surface, and he was swimming, fighting, trying to reach Mara. He got close, got his hand on her coat. Then the current hit a bend and slammed him into a rock. Lian heard the impact from the bank, saw him lose his grip, saw Mara swept further downstream. Caleb was struggling now, dazed from the hit, trying to stay afloat. He went under, came up coughing, went under again. Lian made a decision. She spurred Sadie forward, racing ahead of the current, looking for there. A fallen cottonwood stretched across the water, creating a natural bridge, precarious, rotting in places. But it would have to do. She abandoned the horse and climbed onto the log. It shifted under her weight, groaning. Pieces of bark broke off and fell into the churning water below. "Don't think, just move." She scrambled forward, crawling on hands and knees. The log was slick, covered in moss. Her hand slipped. Her knee cracked against wood hard enough to make her vision blur. Keep going. Below her, Mara was getting closer, still fighting the water, still alive. Lian positioned herself as far out as she dared, lay flat on her stomach, and reached down. "Mara, grab my hand!" The girl's eyes found her, wide, terrified, barely conscious. "Grab on!" Mara reached, missed. The current pulled her closer. She reached again. Their fingers touched. Lian lunged, caught Mara's wrist, and held on with everything she had. The impact nearly pulled her off the log. Her shoulder screamed. Her grip was slipping. No. She hooked her legs around the log, used her whole body as an anchor, and pulled. Mara was small, but the water didn't want to let go. It fought for her, tried to rip her away. Lian pulled harder, felt something tear in her shoulder. Didn't care. She got Mara's head above water, got her arms around the log. Hold on. Do not let go. Mara clung to the wood with everything she had left. Now for Caleb. He was maybe 30 yards downstream, still fighting, losing, going under more than he was surfacing. Lian looked at the bank, at the water, calculating. Impossible. But so was everything else today. She told Mara, "Stay here, do not move." Then she crawled further out on the log. It sagged dangerously, dipping toward the water. Any second it would break would dump them both into the current. Caleb went under again, didn't come up right away. "Caleb!" He surfaced 20 yards out, barely conscious. The water was winning. Lian had seconds, maybe less. She found a branch jutting from the log. Thin, probably weak, definitely not meant for this. She grabbed it with one hand, leaned out as far as physics would allow, and stretched her other hand toward the water. "Caleb, swim to me!" He saw her, or maybe he didn't, but something made him move in her direction. The current brought him closer, closer. His hand broke the surface, grasping. Lian lunged, caught his wrist, and felt her whole world tilt. The branch creaked. The log shifted. Mara screamed, actually screamed, the first sound Lian had ever heard her make that loud. But Lian didn't let go. She pulled with strength she didn't know she had, adrenaline flooding every muscle. Caleb's weight was trying to drag her into the water, but she'd already decided. They both lived, or they both drowned. Those were the only options. She got him close enough to grab the log, got his other hand on it. He clung there, coughing water, barely conscious. "Pull yourself up. Come on." He tried, failed, tried again. Mara was crying now, silent tears running down her face. "Caleb," Lian said, voice hard, "your daughter is watching. You pull yourself up right now or she watches you die. Those are your choices." Something in his eyes focused. He looked at Mara, looked at Lian, then he pulled. It took everything he had, but he got himself onto the log, lay there gasping like a landed fish. They stayed like that for a minute, maybe 5. Time had stopped meaning anything. Finally, Caleb croaked, "We need to get off this thing before it breaks." Moving was agony. Caleb could barely function. Mara was in shock. Lian's shoulder was on fire and her hands were bleeding from splinters and rocks. But they moved. Inch by inch, crawling backward, they made it to solid ground. The moment they were safe, Caleb collapsed. Lian grabbed Mara, checked her for injuries, cuts, bruises, soaking wet and freezing, but alive. "Are you hurt?" Lian asked. Mara shook her head, then threw her arms around Lian's neck and sobbed. Actually sobbed, out loud, making sounds. Lian held her tight, her own tears mixing with the creek water still dripping from her hair. Caleb rolled onto his side, coughing. She's alive. We are all alive." "How?" He looked at the log, at the water, at Lian. "How did you—" "I did what needed to be done." He stared at her like seeing her for the first time. "You saved her. You saved both of us. You dove in first, and I would have drowned if you hadn't—" He stopped, overcome. "Jesus, Lian, you could have died. So could you, so could Mara, but we did not." She looked down at the girl still clinging to her. What was she doing out here alone? "I don't know. She was supposed to be at the house." Caleb pushed himself up, wincing. "Mara, sweetheart, what happened?" The girl's face crumpled. She buried it in Lian's shoulder. "Later," Lian said. "We need to get warm, all of us, before hypothermia sets in." Caleb tried to stand, swayed, nearly fell. Lian caught him with her good arm. "I am fine," he muttered. "You are not fine. You hit your head on a rock. You can barely stand. Just dizzy. Yes, from a head injury." She looked around. Sadie was gone. Probably ran home. Caleb's roan was nowhere in sight either. "Can you walk?" "Have to. It's 3 miles back." 3 miles? In wet clothes. With Caleb concussed and Mara traumatized and Lian's shoulder probably dislocated. Then we walk. It took 2 hours to get home. 2 hours of stumbling, stopping, pushing forward. Caleb kept veering off the path. Mara couldn't stop shaking. Lian's vision grayed out twice. But they made it. Martha was there?
She had come to check on Mara and found the house empty. When she saw them stumbling out of the dusk, soaking wet and half dead, she nearly collapsed. "What in heaven's name? Creak," Caleb managed. "Mara fell in. He swayed again. Martha took charge immediately, got them inside, started stripping off wet clothes, building up the fire, heating water. Lian tried to help, and Martha pushed her into a chair. "You sit. You're gray as a ghost." Mara wouldn't let go of Lian's hand. Even when Martha tried to take her to change clothes, she clung tight. "It is all right," Lian told her. "Go with Mrs. Hendricks. I will be right here." Mara's eyes searched her face. Then, so quietly it was almost imagined. "Promise?" The first word she'd spoken in years. Lian's throat closed. "I promise." Martha got Mara into dry clothes while Lian peeled off her own wet things with one hand. Her left shoulder had stopped working entirely. When she tried to rotate it, white pain shot down her arm. Caleb was sitting by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, eyes glazed. "How many fingers am I holding up?" Lian asked, standing in front of him in just her underclothes, too exhausted to care about modesty. "4. "Wrong. It is 3. "Then why'd you ask?" "To see if you could count. You have a concussion." "I'm fine." "Stop saying that when it is not true." She moved to check his head, found a lump the size of an egg behind his right ear. "You need to stay awake. If you fall asleep with a head injury..." "I know. I'm not going to fall asleep." "Good." She sat down next to him, suddenly too tired to stand. Her shoulder was screaming. Her hands were shredded. She was fairly certain she'd cracked a rib. But they were alive. Martha appeared with hot coffee and blankets. "I want the full story. What happened out there?" Between the three of them, mostly Caleb since Mara still wasn't talking much, and Lian's teeth were chattering too hard, they pieced it together. Mara had gotten scared when they didn't come home on time, had gone looking for them, tried to cross the creek at a shallow spot that wasn't shallow anymore. The water had taken her. "You could have died," Martha said to the girl, voice shaking. "All of you could have died." "But we did not," Lian said again. It was becoming her mantra. Martha stayed until they were all warm and dry and stable. Before she left, she pulled Lian aside. "What you did today, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen. It was the only thing to do. Most people would have frozen, would have panicked. You climbed out on that log." Martha's voice broke. "You saved them both." "Caleb saved Mara first, and nearly died doing it." "You saved them both," Martha repeated firmly. "Don't diminish it." After she left, the house fell into quiet. Mara was asleep in Lian's bed, had refused to sleep anywhere else. Caleb was supposed to be staying awake, fighting the concussion. Lian sat with him by the fire, her shoulder bound with strips of cloth, useless. "We should take you to a doctor," Caleb said. "That shoulder cannot afford a doctor. It will heal." "Lian, it will heal," she repeated. "We have survived worse today than a dislocated shoulder." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I thought I lost her. When I saw her in that water..." His voice cracked. "I thought this was it. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd tried to protect, just gone. But it is not gone. She is alive. You are alive. Because of you. Because we worked together. Because we did not give up." Caleb turned to look at her, firelight making shadows dance across his face. "You're not what I expected." "I know. The photograph... No, I mean..." He struggled for words. "I expected help. Someone to cook and clean and take care of Mara. I didn't expect..." He gestured at her, at everything. "This, you, someone who'd risk their life without hesitation. Someone who'd fight like that. You dove into a flooded creek. You do not get to act like I am the brave one. I'm her father. That's different." "Why? Because you share blood?" Lian shook her head. "Blood does not make someone worth saving. Being human does." "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, nothing makes sense." They sat in silence, watching the fire. Lian's eyes were getting heavy despite everything. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "You should sleep," Caleb said. "I'll stay up. Someone needs to watch you. Make sure you do not lose consciousness." "I'll be fine." "Caleb Vance, if you say you are fine one more time, I will hit you with this blanket."
A ghost of a smile crossed his face. That a threat? It is a promise. Can't hit hard with a dislocated shoulder. I will manage. He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was so unexpected that Lian found herself smiling too. We almost died today, Caleb said, still smiling, and we're sitting here arguing about who's more stubborn. You are more stubborn. The hell I am. You climbed out on a rotting log over flooded water. That's not stubborn, that's insane. It worked. Barely. That log could have broken any second. But it did not. You got lucky. We got lucky, Lian corrected. All of us. Together. The weight of that word, together, hung between them. Caleb's hand was on the chair arm close to hers. Lian watched it, watched his fingers tap absently against the wood, and wondered what would happen if she reached over, if she closed that small distance. She didn't, not yet. Maybe not ever. But the thought was there. Thank you, Caleb said quietly, for saving my daughter, for saving me, for... He stopped, started again. For being here, for being you. I did not know who else to be. Yeah, I'm figuring that out. Lian's eyes finally closed despite her best efforts. She jerked awake, found Caleb watching her. Go to bed, he said. I'll wake you in a few hours. We can trade off. You promise you will stay awake? I promise. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she was fine, but her body had other ideas. She stood, swayed, and Caleb caught her with his good arm. Easy. I am just tired. Yeah, you earned it. He steadied her, and for a moment they were very close. Close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes. Close enough to feel the heat coming off him. Caleb, get some sleep, Lian. She went to check on Mara first. The girl was curled in a tight ball, face still tear-stained, but sleeping. Lian brushed hair back from her forehead, and Mara's hand shot out, grabbed hers. I am here, Lian whispered. I am not leaving. Mara's grip loosened but didn't let go. So Lian climbed into bed beside her, fully clothed, shoulder throbbing, and let the girl hold onto her hand like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. Within seconds, she was asleep. She woke to voices. Angry voices. Male voices. Lian jerked upright, immediately regretting it as pain shot through her shoulder. Mara was still asleep beside her. The voices were coming from outside. Caleb and someone else. Lian got up, moved to the window. Dawn light was just starting to break. In the yard, Caleb was facing off against James Cartwright. No, not now. Not after everything. She went outside, not bothering with shoes. Don't care what you think you're owed, Caleb was saying, voice hard. You're not getting this land. I heard about your little accident yesterday, Cartwright said smoothly. Whole town's talking about it. How your daughter nearly drowned, how you needed your Chinese bride to save you both. He smiled. Must be embarrassing. Big strong rancher, rescued by a woman. Get off my property. I'm just saying, maybe it's time to admit you can't handle this place. Sell to me. Take the money. Start over somewhere easier. Not happening. Your daughter almost died, Caleb. What happens next time? What happens when your luck runs out? Lian stepped forward. His luck has not run out. We are all alive. Cartwright's eyes slid to her. Ah, the hero of the hour. I heard you were quite impressive, climbing out on that log. Very dramatic. What do you want? Lian asked flatly. I want Caleb to be reasonable, to see that this ranch is too much for him, that he's endangering his daughter by being stubborn. He is not endangering anyone. We had an accident. We survived. That is all. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like this place is falling apart. The creek's flooding. The barn needs repairs. You're barely scraping by. And now you've got injuries to deal with. He looked at Lian's bound shoulder. How are you going to keep up with the work like that? We will manage. Will you? Because I'm offering a solution. Good money. Enough to set up somewhere else, somewhere safer. Caleb stepped between them. I've told you no 100 times. The answer's not changing. Even after yesterday? Even after almost losing Mara? Something in Caleb snapped. He grabbed Cartwright by the shirt, lifted him half off the ground. You don't get to use my daughter to manipulate me. You want this land? You're going to have to kill me for it. Those are your options. Caleb, Lian said quietly, let him go. Not until he understands. He understands. He just does not care. Let him go." Caleb held on for another second, then released Cartwright with a shove. The man straightened his shirt, smile gone. "You're making a mistake. Both of you. This ranch is dying, and when it finally goes under, don't come crying to me." He rode off, leaving them standing in the yard. Caleb was shaking again, but not from cold this time, from rage. "I am going to kill him," he said flatly. "One of these days, I'm actually going to kill him." "No, you are not. He's not going to stop, Lian. He wants this land and he'll do anything to get it. Then we do not give it to him. We fight. We survive. We prove him wrong." Caleb turned to her, eyes fierce. "How? You heard him. He's right about some of it. The ranch is struggling. We're barely holding on. And now you're injured, I'm concussed, and the creek's about to flood again. How do we fight that?" "The same way we fought the creek. Together. Without giving up. That's not a plan. That's hope. Sometimes hope is all you have." He stared at her for a long moment, then pulled her into a hug, careful of her shoulder, and just held on. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," he said into her hair, "but I'm grateful for it." Lian's good arm came up, wrapped around him. "You took me in. You gave me a chance. That is what you did. That's not enough. Not for what you've given back. It is enough for me." They stood there in the dawn light, holding each other, two people who'd almost lost everything and somehow found something worth keeping instead. When they finally pulled apart, Caleb's eyes were wet. "We're going to make this work," he said. "Whatever it takes. We're going to keep this ranch and raise Mara," and he stopped, seemed to reconsider his words, started again. "And we're going to do it together, if you'll stay. Where else would I go?" "I don't know, but I need to hear you say it, that you're staying, that this is real." Lian met his eyes. "I am staying. This is real. Whatever happens next, we face it together." "Together," he repeated, like testing the word. "Together." Behind them, the door opened. Mara stood there in her nightgown, watching them. "Hey, sweetheart," Caleb said. "How are you feeling?" Mara looked at him, at Lian, then ran forward and threw her arms around both of them. And just like that, something shifted. Something locked into place. They weren't just three people sharing a house anymore. They were a family. Broken, damaged, held together by stubbornness and necessity, and something that might eventually become love. But a family nonetheless. And families didn't give up. Not without one hell of a fight. The weeks that followed the creek incident moved differently than before. Slower in some ways, faster in others. Lian's shoulder healed badly at first. She'd waited too long to set it properly, and Martha had to come out and wrench it back into place while Caleb held Lian down and Mara watched with wide, terrified eyes. The sound Lian made when the joint popped back wasn't human. She'd bitten through her lip to keep from screaming louder, and afterward Caleb looked like he might be sick. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I should have taken you to a doctor. I should have—" "It is done," Lian had gasped through the pain. "Stop apologizing." But the apology stayed in his eyes for days. Mara stuck even closer after that. Started talking more, not a lot, just small words here and there, but it was something. She'd say yes and no, and sometimes please. Once she'd looked at Lian stirring soup and said, "Smells good?" And Lian had to turn away to hide the fact that her eyes were wet. Caleb noticed anyway. He noticed everything now. The ranch work had to continue despite injuries. Caleb still had a headache that wouldn't quit, and Lian could barely lift her left arm, but the horses needed feeding and the fences needed mending, and life didn't stop for pain. They adapted. Caleb handled anything that required two good arms. Lian did what she could one-handed. Mara helped more, carrying tools, fetching water, learning to be useful in small ways. It was Martha who suggested they needed more help. "You can't run this place with 1.5 working people," she said bluntly, having shown up with a basket of food and her usual no-nonsense attitude. "You need to hire someone." "Can't afford it," Caleb said. "Can you afford to lose the ranch because you're too stubborn to ask for help?" "That's different." "No, it's not." Martha set down the basket with a thump. "There's a young man, Tommy Chen, just arrived from San Francisco. He's looking for work. Ranch work specifically." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Chinese?" "Yes. Is that a problem?" "No, I just—" He glanced at Lian. "Town's already got opinions about Lian.
I hire another Chinese worker. They're going to talk more. Let them talk, Lian said quietly. If he is good at the work, what does it matter?
It matters because Cartwright will use it. We'll say I'm trying to turn this into something un-American or some other garbage. So we let Cartwright dictate who we hire? Martha's voice was sharp. That's not like you, Caleb Vance. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, all right, send him out. I'll talk to him. Tommy Chen showed up 2 days later. He was young, maybe 20, with a wiry build and hands that showed he'd done hard work before. He spoke English with an accent thicker than Lian's, but his eyes were intelligent and his answers were direct. I worked on a ranch in California, he said when Caleb asked about experience. 2 years. Boss sold the land, so I came here looking for new work. Why Montana? Heard there were opportunities. Was I wrong? Caleb studied him. Works hard. Pays not great. And the town, they're not going to be friendly. I do not need them to be friendly. I need work. Something in his tone reminded Lian of herself. That same practicality, that same willingness to endure anything if it meant survival. You're hired, Caleb said. Trial basis. 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes. Tommy's face didn't change much, but relief flickered in his eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen how much work there is. Tommy moved into the barn. Caleb fixed up a corner with a cot and a stove and threw himself into the work immediately. He was good. Better than good. He knew horses, knew fencing, knew the 100 small things that kept a ranch running. More than that, he was quiet. Didn't pry. Didn't ask questions about why Lian was there or what her arrangement with Caleb was. Just worked. At dinner the first night, Lian had insisted he eat with them. Mara stared at him with open curiosity. You can ask, Tommy said to her in English, then switched to Cantonese. I do not bite. Mara's eyes went wide. She looked at Lian. Lian responded in the same language. It is all right. He is safe. It was the first time Caleb had heard her speak Chinese. His expression went complicated. What'd you say? He asked. I told her Tommy is safe, that she can trust him. You speak... He stopped, started again. I didn't know you spoke Chinese. You never asked. I should have. He looked uncomfortable. I should have asked a lot of things. Mara, emboldened, spoke to Tommy in halting Cantonese, asked where he was from. Tommy answered patiently, and soon they were having a real conversation. Small, stumbling, but real. Caleb watched this, something shifting in his face. Later, when Tommy had gone back to the barn and Mara was in bed, he said to Lian, I never thought about what you gave up, coming here. What do you mean? Your language, he gestured vaguely. Your people, everything familiar. You've been here months and you haven't had anyone to talk to in your own tongue. That must have been, he struggled for the word. Lonely. Everything is lonely. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be. Lian was quiet, absorbing this. It was my choice to come. Yeah, but... He ran a hand through his hair. I'm glad Tommy's here, not just for the work. For you. I did not ask for that. I know, but I'm giving it anyway. The next Sunday, Martha convinced them to go back to town for the church social. Lian had refused twice, but Martha was persistent. You can't hide forever, she said. And after what you did, saving Mara and Caleb, people are talking differently now. They are always talking. Yes, but now some of them are talking about how brave you were, how you risked your life. That counts for something. Lian doubted it, but she agreed to go anyway. Caleb looked about as thrilled as she felt, but he put on clean clothes and hitched up the wagon without complaint. Tommy stayed behind to watch the ranch. Mara came with them, holding Lian's hand the entire ride into town. The community hall was packed again. Same faces, same setup, but when they walked in, the reaction was different. People still stared, but some of them nodded. A few even smiled. Martha materialized immediately, steering them toward a group of women who actually looked friendly. This is Lian Vance, Martha announced, like they didn't already know. And I'm sure you've all heard about what she did. One of the women, younger, with kind eyes, stepped forward. We heard. That was incredible. Climbing out on that log, I can't imagine having that kind of courage. It was not courage, Lian said. It was necessity. Still, you saved them both. The woman smiled. That's something to be proud of. More women approached, asked questions, wanted details. Lian answered as briefly as possible, uncomfortable with the attention. Caleb watched from across the room, talking to some of the men, but his eyes kept finding her, making sure she was okay. Then James Cartwright showed up. He didn't approach directly, just positioned himself where everyone could see him, talking loud enough to be overheard. Impressive, sure, but let's not forget the girl wouldn't have been in danger if Caleb had been watching her properly. Whole thing was negligence, if you ask me. Several heads turned. The friendly atmosphere cooled. Caleb's expression went dark. He started toward Cartwright, and Lian knew that look, knew what was about to happen. She intercepted him, hand on his chest. Do not. He's calling me a bad father. He is trying to provoke you. Do not give him what he wants. I'm not letting him. Then let me handle it. Before Caleb could argue, Lian turned and walked straight to Cartwright. The man's smile widened when he saw her coming. Mrs. Vance, enjoying the social? No. I am enduring it. Much like I endure you. His smile flickered. Excuse me? You heard me. You show up. You spread poison. You try to make good people feel small. It is what you do. What I do not understand is why these people listen to you. The conversations around them stopped. People were watching now. I'm just stating facts, Cartwright said smoothly. A child shouldn't have been near that creek unsupervised. She was not unsupervised. She left the house looking for us because she was worried. Children do that. They love their parents and they worry. Perhaps you do not understand that. I understand that a responsible father, Caleb is the most responsible father I have ever seen. He works himself to exhaustion for that child. He dove into a flooding creek without hesitation to save her. And when that was not enough, he trusted me to help. That is not negligence. That is love. Cartwright's face hardened. You've been here, what, a few months? And you think you understand? I understand more than you think. I understand that you want his land, that you have wanted it for years, that you will say anything, do anything to get it. But you will not get it. Not through intimidation, not through manipulation, not through turning this town against him. She stepped closer. Because I will not let you. You? Cartwright laughed. What are you going to do? You're nobody. A mail-order bride who doesn't even belong here. I belong here more than you ever will, because I build things, I fix things, I make things better. All you do is tear down. Lian's voice was quiet, but it carried. And people are starting to notice. She turned and walked away before he could respond. The room was silent, every eye on her. Caleb met her halfway, eyes blazing with something that might have been pride. He struggled for words. That was incredible. That was stupid. I made an enemy. You already had an enemy. Now he knows you're not afraid of him. Martha appeared at their side, practically vibrating with satisfaction. Did you see his face? I thought he was going to choke. He will retaliate, Lian said. Probably. But you stood up to him in front of everyone. That matters. Martha squeezed her arm. People respect courage. And what you just did? That was courage. Lian wasn't sure about that. But when they left an hour later, several people stopped them to say goodbye. To tell Lian she'd done well. To tell Caleb they were glad his family was safe. Family. The word kept coming up. On the ride home, Mara dozed between them again. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. You didn't have to defend me like that, Caleb said quietly. Yes, I did. Why? Lian looked at him. At this man who'd taken her in despite everything, who worked himself to exhaustion, who loved his daughter with a fierceness that sometimes made her chest ache. Because you are my husband, she said simply. And that means something, to me. His hands tightened on the reins. I thought this was just what? A business arrangement? Maybe it started that way. But it is not that anymore. Not for me. Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop, right there on the road, with the sun setting and Mara sleeping between them. Not for me either, he said roughly. They sat there looking at each other, and Lian felt something huge shifting between them, something that had been building since the moment she'd pulled him from that creek, maybe longer. I don't know how to do this, Caleb said. I was married before and I failed at it. I don't know how to... He gestured helplessly. How to be what you need.
I need someone who does not give up, who fights for what matters. You are already that. Not enough.
It is enough for me. He reached over Mara's sleeping form, took Lian's hand. His palm was rough, calloused from years of work. It felt solid, real. When this started, he said, I thought I was getting help. Someone to cook and clean and take care of Mara. Instead I got... He stopped, started again. I got you, and you're so much more than I deserve. Stop saying that. Stop acting like you are not worth... He kissed her, just leaned across, careful not to wake Mara, and pressed his lips to hers. It was awkward. Their noses bumped. Lian's injured shoulder protested when she tried to lean in. But it was real. Honest. No pretending. When they pulled apart, Caleb's eyes were wet. I'm falling in love with you, he said. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you held that rifle on Cartwright. Maybe when you climbed out on that log. Maybe the first time you told me to stop apologizing. But it happened, and I don't know what to do about it. Lian's heart was hammering. You could kiss me again. That seemed to work. So he did. Longer this time, deeper, and Lian felt something in her chest crack wide open. When they pulled apart, Mara was awake, watching them with sleepy eyes. It is all right, Lian told her. Go back to sleep. But Mara smiled, actually smiled, and curled back against Lian's side. They made it home as full darkness fell. Tommy had kept the fire going, had dinner waiting. He took one look at their faces and made himself scarce. After Mara was in bed, Caleb found Lian in the kitchen. I've been sleeping in that extra room for months, he said without preamble. Didn't want to presume anything. Didn't want to make you uncomfortable. I know. But if... He stopped, took a breath. If this is real, if we're really doing this, then maybe... He gestured vaguely at the bedroom hallway. Maybe we should... Yes, Lian said. Yes? Yes, we should. That night, Caleb moved his things from the extra room into Lian's. Their room. The transition was awkward. They were both nervous, both uncertain, but it felt right. They lay in bed together for the first time, not touching at first, both staring at the ceiling. This is strange, Caleb said finally. Yes. Good strange or bad strange? I am not sure yet. He laughed, and the sound relaxed something in both of them. He reached over, found her hand, laced their fingers together. We'll figure it out, he said. Yes, we will. They fell asleep like that, hands linked, and for the first time since Lian had arrived in Montana, she felt something that might have been peace. The next morning, everything was different and exactly the same. There was still work to do, still a ranch to run, still Cartwright circling like a vulture. But now they faced it together, actually together. Tommy noticed immediately. Didn't comment, just gave Caleb a knowing look that made the man's ears go red. Mara noticed, too. At breakfast, she looked between them and said, happy. What's that, sweetheart? Caleb asked. You look happy. Caleb glanced at Lian. Yeah, I guess I am. Me too, Mara said quietly. Then, even quieter. Because of Lian. Lian's throat closed up. She reached over, squeezed the girl's hand. Because of all of us, she managed. The week passed in a blur of work and small domestic moments that felt huge. Caleb teaching Lian to ride better, Lian teaching Mara to read Chinese characters, Tommy fixing the barn door that had been broken for 2 years. They were becoming something. Not perfect. Nothing about them was perfect. But functional. Real. Then Saturday came, and with it, a visitor. Lynn was hanging laundry when she heard the wagon. Looked up to see an unfamiliar rig pulling into the yard, driven by a man in a suit that was too nice for ranch visiting. Caleb came out of the barn, Tommy beside him. The man climbed down, all business. Caleb Vance? That's me. I'm here representing James Cartwright. He's made a formal offer for your property. The man held out a paper. Quite generous, actually. Caleb didn't take it. Already told him no. Mr. Cartwright thought you might reconsider, given recent events, the flooding, the accidents, the financial strain. The man's eyes flicked to Lian, to Tommy. The additional expenses of running a household. Tell Cartwright the answer's still no. Mr. Vance, I think you should look at the offer. It's more than fair market value. You could pay off your debts, relocate somewhere less. He paused delicately. Challenging. I don't want to relocate. With respect, sir, you're barely holding on. Another bad season and you'll lose everything anyway. This way you walk away with money in your pocket. Caleb's jaw was tight. I walk away with nothing. This land is my daughter's future. I'm not selling it. Your daughter's future might be better served somewhere safer, somewhere she's not at risk of drowning in creeks or, "Get off my property!" The man sighed. Mr. Cartwright anticipated this response. He asked me to inform you that his offer won't stand indefinitely. You have 1 month to reconsider. After that, he shrugged. After that, he'll pursue other options. What's that supposed to mean? It means Mr. Cartwright is a patient man, but his patience has limits. Good day, Mr. Vance. He left, and Caleb stood there holding the rejected offer, shaking with rage. Other options, he said flatly. What the hell does that mean? It means he is escalating, Lian said, coming to stand beside him. It means we need to be careful. I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of him thinking he can. Caleb crumpled the paper. I should ride into town right now and what? Hit him? That is what he wants. He wants you to do something that makes you look unstable, that gives him legal grounds to take the ranch. Tommy spoke up. She is right. Men like Cartwright, they do not fight fair. They use the law. They use money. You cannot beat them with fists. Then how do I beat them? You do not give them anything to use against you, Lian said firmly. You keep this ranch running. You keep your family safe. You prove you are not going anywhere. Caleb looked at her, then at Tommy, then back at the house where Mara was probably watching from the window. 1 month, he said. He gave me 1 month. After that, he's coming after this place for real. Then we have 1 month to prepare, Lian said. 1 month to make this ranch unbreakable. How? I do not know yet, but we will figure it out. Together. That word again. Together. Caleb pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I can't lose this place. I can't lose what we're building. You will not. We will not. She pulled back, met his eyes. But we need help, real help, not just Tommy. We need allies. We need the town on our side. The town barely tolerates us. Some of them do. Martha, those women at the social, the people who respected what we did. We need to turn that into something stronger. How? Lian thought for a moment. Then, we invite them here. We show them what we are building. We make them see that this ranch is worth saving. A social? Here? Yes, a gathering. Let them see the work we have done. Let them meet Tommy. Let them see Mara happy and healthy. Make them care about what happens to us. Caleb looked skeptical. It is a risk. I know. But what choice do we have? He was quiet for a long time. Then, all right, we'll try it your way. They spent the next week preparing, cleaned the house until it gleamed, fixed the fence line that was visible from the road. Tommy repaired the porch steps and repainted the barn door. Martha helped spread the word. The Vance family was hosting a gathering, food, music, a chance to see the ranch. Some people accepted immediately. Others were skeptical. A few outright refused, but enough said yes that it would matter. The day of the gathering, Lian was up before dawn, cooking. Martha arrived early to help. Tommy set up tables outside. Caleb paced like a caged animal. This is going to be a disaster, he muttered. It will be fine, Lian said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. What if no one comes? Then we eat a lot of food ourselves. What if Cartwright shows up? Then we deal with him, like we always do. People started arriving around noon, slow at first, then steadier. Families, couples, even some of the men Caleb did business with. They toured the ranch, admired the horses, watched Tommy demonstrate his skills with a rope. Mara showed some of the children her books, speaking in her quiet voice. And Lian talked to everyone, answered questions about where she was from, about how she'd adapted to ranch life, about the creek incident. She didn't hide her birthmark, didn't apologize for being different, just existed confidently and let them see who she really was. By mid-afternoon, the gathering was actually working. People were relaxed, smiling. The food was good. The weather held. Then Cartwright arrived. He came alone, riding up like he owned the place. Caleb saw him first, and his whole body went rigid. "Stay calm," Lian murmured. "Everyone is watching." Cartwright dismounted, all smiles. "Caleb, quite the party you're throwing. Mind if I join?" "Yeah, I mind." "Come now. I'm a member of this community too. Surely I'm welcome." People were watching now, uncertain. Martha stepped forward. "James, this is a private gathering. For friends and neighbors, I heard. I'm a neighbor." He looked around at the crowd. "In fact, I'd argue I'm more invested in this community than most. I employ half the town. I support local businesses. I think that earns me a place at the table." He was smooth, made it impossible to refuse without looking petty. Caleb's fists clenched. Lian put a hand on his arm. "He can stay," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We have nothing to hide." Cartwright's smile widened. "See, Mrs. Vance understands hospitality." He moved through the crowd, shaking hands, making small talk, playing the part of the friendly neighbor. Lian watched him work and felt cold settle in her stomach. Then he found Mara. The girl was showing her books to some other children when Cartwright approached. "Hello there, Mara. Remember me?" Mara looked up, went still. "I heard you had quite the adventure in that creek. Must have been scary." Mara didn't respond, just watched him with wary eyes. "Your father must have been terrified, thinking he might lose you. Makes a man reconsider his priorities, doesn't it? Makes him think about what's really important." Cartwright's voice was loud enough to carry. "Safety, for instance. Stability. Making sure his daughter grows up somewhere that's not constantly putting her in danger." Lian was moving before she realized it, got between Cartwright and Mara. "That is enough." "I'm just making conversation." "No, you are using a child to make your point. It is disgusting." His mask slipped for just a second. "I'm pointing out facts. You are pointing out nothing. Mara is safe. Mara is loved. Mara is thriving. And you using her trauma to push your agenda shows exactly what kind of man you are." The crowd had gone quiet. Everyone watching. Cartwright's face hardened. "I'm trying to help. This ranch is failing. Everyone can see it. Caleb's in over his head, and his pride is going to destroy whatever's left. I'm offering a solution. We do not want your solution. We do not want your help. We want you to leave our family alone." Lian's voice was shaking now, but she didn't care. "You want this land. Fine. But you will not get it by tormenting a child. You will not get it by breaking this family. You will have to find another way. There is no other way. This ranch is done. It's just a matter of time. Then I guess we will see who is right." She turned her back on him, a deliberate insult, and guided Mara away. Cartwright stood there, alone, his performance ruined. Martha started clapping. Slow at first, then louder. Others joined in. Not everyone, but enough. Cartwright's face went purple. He stormed to his horse, mounted, and rode off without another word. The gathering continued, but the mood had shifted. People came up to Lian, to Caleb, told them they'd done the right thing, that they supported them, that Cartwright had gone too far. Not everyone. Some left quietly, clearly uncomfortable, but more stayed. And when the day ended, Caleb counted. They'd made more allies than they'd lost. That night, after everyone had gone and the house was clean and Mara was asleep, Caleb and Lian stood on the porch looking at the stars. "You were incredible today," Caleb said. "The way you stood up to him, protected Mara." "I only did what needed to be done." "No, you did more than that." He turned to face her. "You made people see us, really see us, not as a failed rancher and his foreign bride, as a family worth fighting for." "We are worth fighting for." "Yeah, we are." He pulled her close. "I love you, Lian Zhou. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you." Lian's eyes burned. "I love you too." They kissed under the Montana stars, and for the first time since she'd stepped off that train, Lian felt like she'd found where she was supposed to be. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because it was real. And real was worth fighting for. The month Cartwright had given them passed faster than any of them wanted. 28 days of waiting for the other shoe to drop. 28 days of working harder than they'd ever worked, trying to make the ranch profitable enough to be unshakable. It wasn't enough. Lian knew it. Caleb knew it. Even Tommy, who tried to stay optimistic, knew it. The numbers didn't lie. They were still barely breaking even. One bad season, one major expense, and they'd go under. Cartwright knew it too. On day 29, he made his move. The sheriff showed up at noon. Not hostile. Sheriff Morrison was a decent man, but he didn't look happy about what he had to do. Caleb, Lian, he tipped his hat. I need to talk to you both. They gathered in the kitchen. Mara was outside with Tommy, thank God. Whatever this was, Lian didn't want the girl hearing it. Cartwright's filed a claim, Morrison said without preamble. Says you owe him money. Says he loaned you funds 2 years ago to cover some debts and you never paid him back. Caleb went white. That's a lie. I never borrowed a cent from that son of a... He's got paperwork, a promissory note with your signature. Then it's forged. I never signed anything. Morrison pulled out a document, set it on the table. This look like your signature? Caleb stared at it. His hand trembled when he picked it up. That's... He stopped. That looks like my writing, but I never... He looked at Lian, then back at the sheriff. Elizabeth, my ex-wife. She used to handle the paperwork. She must have... Your wife who left 3 years ago? Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. Caleb, I need more than that. I'm telling you, I didn't sign this. Cartwright fabricated it somehow. You have proof of that? No, but then legally, I have to treat this as valid. He's calling in the debt. You've got 30 days to pay, or he can seize assets to cover what's owed. How much? Lian asked, though she already knew it would be bad. Morrison looked pained. $8,000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. We don't have that, Caleb said flatly. Not even close. I know, I'm sorry. Morrison stood. You've got 30 days to figure something out. After that, I have to enforce the claim. After he left, Caleb sat at the table with his head in his hands. He's going to take everything, he said. He forged that document, had to have. And there's no way to prove it. No way to fight it. There's always a way to fight, Lian said, but even she didn't sound convinced. Not this time. He wins. He finally wins. No. Lian's voice was sharp. He does not win until we give up, and we are not giving up. What choice do we have? We can't pay $8,000 in 30 days. We can't even pay half that. Then we find another solution. What solution? Rob a bank? He laughed bitterly. There's no way out of this, Lian. I've been fighting for years to keep this place, and I'm tired. I'm so damn tired. She grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. You listen to me. You are not tired. You are scared. There is a difference. Tired people give up. Scared people fight harder. I don't know how to fight this. Then we figure it out. Together. Like we always do. But for the first time since she'd arrived, Lian wasn't sure they could. That night she couldn't sleep. Lay in bed next to Caleb, who was also awake, staring at the ceiling, and tried to think. $8,000. Impossible. Unless... The horses, she said suddenly. What? The horses you were going to sell to the army. How much would they bring? Maybe 2,000. 3 if we're lucky. And if we sold everything else? The cattle. The equipment we do not need. Maybe another 1,000. We'd still be short by half. Half is better than nothing. Caleb turned to look at her. You want to sell everything we have just to give Cartwright most of what he wants? That doesn't solve the problem. No, but it buys us time. We pay him what we can. We make a good faith effort. Maybe the sheriff gives us an extension. And then what? We're broke and still owe him money. Then we start over. We rebuild. We do not let him take this place without a fight. Caleb studied her in the darkness. You really believe we can win this? I believe we can survive it. That is enough. The next week was brutal. They sold everything that wasn't essential. The cattle went first, didn't bring as much as they'd hoped. Then the extra equipment. Then the horses Caleb had been training for the army. Tommy helped negotiate. Turned out he knew people, had connections, got them better prices than they would have gotten alone. Martha organized a fundraiser in town. Some people contributed, others refused, afraid of crossing Cartwright. They raised $4,000 total, half of what they owed. Caleb took it to Cartwright personally. Lian insisted on going with him. They found him at the saloon, holding court like he owned the place, which technically he did. Caleb, Lian. He smiled when they walked in. To what do I owe the pleasure? We've got money, partial payment on the debt. Caleb set an envelope on the table. 4,000. We need more time for the rest. Cartwright didn't even look at the envelope. The agreement was 8,000 in 30 days, not 4,000 and a promise. We sold everything we could. This is good faith. Good faith doesn't pay debts. Cash does. We'll get you the rest. Just give us 90 days. No. Cartwright leaned back, supremely confident. The deal was 30 days. You've got... He checked his watch. 3 days left. Either you pay in full or I seize assets. Those are your options. You know we can't pay in full. That's the point. You want the ranch. I want what I'm owed. If that happens to include your ranch, well, he shrugged. Should have paid your debts. Lian stepped forward. You forged that document. We all know it. Prove it. We will. We will find a way to prove it, and when you do, I'll own a judge who'll dismiss it. I'll own lawyers who'll bury you in paperwork. I'll own this whole town. His smile widened. You can't beat me. Not with righteousness, not with hard work, not with that touching little display of community support. I have money. I have power. And in this world, that's all that matters. Caleb grabbed the envelope, turned to leave. Lian followed. Behind them, Cartwright called out, 3 days, Caleb, then it's mine. Outside, Caleb stood in the street, shaking. He's right, he said. We can't beat him. Money and power, that's all that matters. No, Lian's voice was fierce. That is not all that matters. People matter. Family matters. What you build matters. Tell that to the bank when they're foreclosing. I will tell it to anyone who will listen, and I will keep telling it until someone believes me. But as they rode home, even Lian's conviction felt fragile. That night, Mara found them sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the $4,000 they couldn't use. What's wrong? The girl asked. Her voice was still quiet, still tentative, but she was asking. That was progress. Caleb looked at Lian. She nodded. The girl deserved the truth. We might have to leave the ranch, sweetheart. A bad man is trying to take it from us. Mara's eyes went wide. Mr. Cartwright? Yeah, how'd you know? I heard people talking at the gathering. They said he wants our home. She moved closer, climbed into Caleb's lap. Can we stop him? I don't know, baby. I'm trying. Lian can stop him. She's brave. Lian's chest tightened. I am not that brave. Yes, you are. You saved me from the water. You can save us from him. The faith in the girl's voice was heartbreaking. Some things cannot be saved with bravery, Lian said gently. Some things require money we do not have. Then we get money. It is not that simple. Why not? Caleb hugged his daughter. Because the world isn't fair, sweetheart. Sometimes bad people win. That's not true. Mara's voice was surprisingly firm. You told me bad people only win if good people give up. You said we never give up. Caleb looked at Lian over Mara's head. I did say that. Then we don't give up, Mara said. We fight. Out of the mouths of children, the simple logic that adults complicated. Tommy came in from the barn, took one look at their faces, and said, What happened? They explained. He listened, expression darkening. 8,000 is impossible, he said finally. But, he paused. What if we did not fight the claim? What if we fought the man? What do you mean? Caleb asked. Cartwright has enemies. Rich men always do. Maybe we find them. Maybe we convince them to help. Why would they help us? Because Cartwright getting more power is bad for them too. Tommy leaned against the counter. In San Francisco, I saw this, businessmen fighting each other, using proxies, using small conflicts to weaken rivals. Maybe we become the proxy. Lian considered this. You are talking about making ourselves weapons in someone else's war. I'm talking about survival, about using the resources we have. We don't have resources, Caleb said. We have a story. We have public sympathy. We have people in town who are tired of Cartwright's bullying. That is worth something. It was risky. It was manipulative. It went against everything Lian believed about honest work and integrity, but desperate times. "Who are his enemies?" she asked. Tommy smiled grimly. "I know a man, railroad developer, wants to expand through Ironwood Hollow. Cartwright has been blocking him. Maybe this man would be interested in Cartwright being distracted. Distracted how? Legal troubles, public scandal, anything that weakens his position." Caleb shook his head. We'd be no better than him. We would be fighting to protect our family. He is fighting for greed. That is the difference. Lian looked at Mara, still sitting in Caleb's lap, watching them with those two old eyes. "Do it," she said. "Contact your railroad man. Let us see what he says." The railroad developer's name was Marcus Chen, Tommy's cousin, as it turned out. He arrived 2 days later, all business and expensive suits. "I heard you've got Cartwright problems," he said, settling into their kitchen like he owned it. "I've got Cartwright problems too. Maybe we help each other." "What do you want from us?" Caleb asked. "I want you to file a formal complaint. Fraud. Document forgery. Make it public. Make it messy. We don't have proof. You have doubt. You have community support. You have a sympathetic story. Hard-working family being destroyed by greedy businessman. That plays well in newspapers." "You want us to take this to the press," Lian said. "I want you to make Cartwright's life difficult. While he's dealing with your case, defending his reputation, I move my railroad through. By the time the dust settles, I'm established and he's weakened." Marcus smiled. "Everyone wins. Except we might lose our ranch in the process," Caleb said. "You're losing it anyway. This way you go down fighting, and maybe the publicity forces Cartwright to back off. Stranger things have happened." It was a long shot, but it was something. They spent the next day drafting their complaint. Tommy helped, drawing on his education. Turned out he'd attended university in California before his family lost their money. He knew legal language, knew how to make the case sound legitimate. Martha helped spread the story in town. By evening, everyone knew the Vances were accusing Cartwright of fraud. The newspaper editor, a man named Hayes who'd always been neutral, came out to interview them. Lian told their story. The photograph that wasn't her. The arrival. The creek. The gathering. The forged document. Hayes took notes, asked questions, and when he left, he looked thoughtful. "This'll make a good story," he said. "Might even make some folks in the Capitol take notice." The article ran 2 days later, front page, complete with a sketch of Lian standing in front of the ranch, looking defiant. The headline read, "Chinese bride fights for family ranch against powerful businessman's fraud claims." It was more dramatic than Lian would have chosen, but it worked. People started talking, not just in Ironwood Hollow, but in neighboring towns. In Helena. Suddenly their small fight was becoming something bigger. Cartwright was furious, came storming out to the ranch 3 days before the deadline. "You think you can drag my name through the mud and get away with it?" "We think we can tell the truth," Lian said calmly. She was standing on the porch, Caleb beside her, rifle nearby, but not in hand. "The truth? You're accusing me of fraud with zero evidence. We have doubt. We have inconsistencies. We have the right to question a debt we do not remember incurring. You'll regret this. I'll bear you in legal fees. I'll destroy whatever reputation you have left. Do your worst." Caleb's voice was steady. "We're not backing down." Cartwright looked between them, and for the first time Lian saw something in his eyes that might have been uncertainty. "You've got 1 day," he said finally. 1 day to come up with the full 8,000, or I'm taking everything." He rode off, and Lian allowed herself a small breath of relief. "He's scared," she said. "How do you figure?" "If he was confident, he would not have come here. He would have waited for the deadline and struck. But he came to threaten us. That means we hurt him. Hurting him and beating him are different things. Yes, but it is a start." That night, they gathered everyone who'd helped them. Martha, Tommy, Marcus Chen, even some of the townspeople who'd contributed to their fundraiser. "Tomorrow's the deadline," Caleb said. "We've got $4,000 in a prayer. That's it." "Maybe that is enough," Lian said. "Maybe Cartwright backs down because of the publicity." "And maybe he doesn't," Martha said. "But either way, you fought. You showed people that bullies can be resisted. That means something." "Does it mean we keep our home?" Mara asked. She'd been sitting quietly in the corner, listening. No one had an answer for that. The deadline arrived with cruel sunshine. Beautiful day. Perfect for losing everything. The sheriff showed up at noon exactly. Cartwright was with him. So was his lawyer. So were half the townspeople, apparently drawn by the spectacle. "You have the money?" Morrison asked. "We have 4,000, Caleb said, "and a counterclaim against Mr. Cartwright for fraud." "Fraud?" The lawyer laughed. "You have zero evidence." "We have enough evidence to make this very expensive for your client. Legal fees, reputation damage, time wasted in court." Lian stepped forward. "Or Mr. Cartwright could accept our partial payment and give us time to pay the rest. His choice." Cartwright's face was red. "I'm not accepting partial." "James?" The lawyer put a hand on his arm. "A word." They conferred quietly. The crowd waited. Lian's heart was hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Finally, Cartwright turned back. "Fine. I'll accept partial payment. With interest. You've got 90 days for the rest." 6 months, Caleb countered. 90 days or the deal's off. Lian wanted to argue, but she caught Caleb's eye and he nodded slightly. 90 days, Caleb agreed. Papers were signed, money exchanged, and just like that, they'd bought 3 more months. It wasn't a victory. Not really. But it wasn't a defeat either. After everyone left, Caleb pulled Lian into a hug. "We did it. We actually did it. We delayed it. That is all. That's everything. That's time to figure out the rest." Mara wrapped her arms around both of them. "You saved us again," she told Lian. "We saved ourselves. All of us." That night, after Mara was asleep and Tommy had gone to the barn and the house was quiet, Caleb led Lian outside. "I want to show you something." He took her to his workshop, a small shed she'd never been in. Inside on the workbench was a ring. Simple silver band, hand-forged, rough around the edges but unmistakably deliberate. "I made this," he said. "Been working on it for weeks. Wanted to wait for the right time, but..." He picked it up, held it out. "There might not be a right time. There's just now." Lian stared at the ring, at this man who'd given her a home when she had nowhere else to go. "We are already married," she said softly. "Legally, yeah, but this..." He gestured between them. "This is different. This is real, and I want you to have something that shows it, something you chose, not something that was decided for you." He got down on one knee, there in the workshop with dust and tools around them. "Lian Zhou, will you marry me? Actually marry me? Not because you have to, not because there's nowhere else to go, but because you want to. Because this, us, is something worth choosing." Lian's eyes burned. "You are asking me to choose what I already chose months ago." "Maybe, but I need to hear you say it. I need to know this is what you want." She knelt down with him, took the ring, turned it in the lamplight. "Yes," she said. "I choose this. I choose you. I choose us." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. They stayed there, kneeling in the workshop, holding each other, and Lian thought about the journey that had brought her here. The lies, the fear, the anger, the slow building of something real. "I was so angry when I first came here," she said. "Angry at my family for sending me away. Angry at you for not being what the photograph promised. Angry at the world for being unfair. You had a right to be, maybe, but anger was not useful. It did not build anything. It did not fix anything. It just made everything harder." "What changed?" "You did. Mara did. This place did." She pulled back to look at him. "You showed me that family is not just blood. That home is not just where you were born. That belonging is something you build, not something you are given." Caleb's eyes were wet. "I thought I was dead inside when Elizabeth left. Thought I'd never feel anything for anyone again. Then you showed up and you were so..." He struggled for words. "So stubbornly alive, so determined to matter. And somewhere along the way, you mattered to me. More than anything. Even the ranch? The ranch is just land. You're..." He cupped her face. "You're everything that makes it home." They kissed there in the dusty workshop, and it felt like a promise. Like a beginning instead of an ending. The next 90 days were hard. They worked constantly, trying to raise the remaining 4,000, sold more horses, took on extra work. Marcus Chen even gave them a contract to supply lumber for his railroad project. It wasn't enough. By day 85, they still owed $2,000. Then Martha showed up with an envelope. The women's auxiliary took a vote, she said. We've been saving for a new church bell, but we think your family staying together is more important than fancy bells. Inside was $1,000. Lian started crying. Couldn't help it. We cannot accept this. You can and you will. You've proven yourself, Lian. You and Caleb both. You've shown this town what it means to fight for something. Let us fight for you. Other contributions came in. Small amounts. $20 from the blacksmith, $50 from the general store owner, $100 from a rancher 3 towns over who'd heard their story. By day 90, they had the full amount. Caleb delivered it to Cartwright personally. No ceremony, no speeches, just cash and a receipt. Debts paid, Caleb said flatly. Cartwright counted it, signed the receipt, and handed it over without a word. As they were leaving, he called out, "This isn't over." Caleb turned back. "Yeah, it is. You wanted money. You got money. We're done." "You humiliated me, made me look weak. That has consequences." "Then I guess you'll have to live with them." They left him standing there, and Lian felt something lift from her chest, a weight she'd been carrying since she'd first arrived. That Sunday, they went to town for the real church social. This time when they walked in, people smiled, waved, made space for them. Mara ran off to play with other children, actually played, laughed, acted like a normal kid. Martha pulled Lian aside. "You did it. You actually did it." "We did it, all of us." "No. You led the way. You showed everyone what courage looks like." She squeezed Lian's hand. "I'm proud of you." Lian looked across the room at Caleb, who was talking to some of the ranchers, at Mara, who was showing another girl her books, at Tommy, who was laughing at something someone said. This was her family. This was her community. This was her home. Not because she'd been born here, not because it was perfect, but because she'd chosen it, because she'd fought for it, because she'd refused to let anyone tell her she didn't belong. That night, lying in bed with Caleb's arm around her and the silver ring on her finger, Lian thought about the woman who'd stepped off that train months ago, scared, angry, convinced she was unwanted. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who'd learned that belonging wasn't given. It was earned through showing up, working hard, and refusing to give up. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb murmured, half asleep. "That I was supposed to be a mistake, the bride no one wanted, the woman who did not match the photograph." "You were never a mistake." "No, but they thought I was. My family, the matchmaker, even you, that first day. I was an idiot that first day. You were honest. You looked at me and saw someone different than you expected. It would have been easy to send me away. Sending you away would have been the biggest mistake of my life." Lian turned to face him in the darkness. "Why did you not? Send me away?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because you looked at this broken place and you didn't run. You looked at me, at Mara, and you didn't judge. You just—" He searched for words. "You just started working, like you belonged here, like you decided to belong here. And I thought, if she can decide that, maybe I can decide to give her a chance." "Best decision you ever made?" "Best decision I ever made." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and for the first time in her life, Lian felt completely at peace. The ranch wasn't perfect. Money was still tight. Work was still hard. Cartwright was still out there, nursing his wounded pride. But none of that mattered as much as it once had, because Lian had learned something her family had never taught her. Worth isn't determined by how you look or where you're born or who wants you. Worth is determined by what you build, who you love, and how hard you're willing to fight for what matters. She'd been sent here as a joke, a mistake, an unwanted woman wrapped in lies. But she'd become something else entirely. A wife, a mother, a fighter, a woman who'd looked at impossible odds and refused to blink. The town still whispered sometimes, still pointed out her birthmark, still called her the Chinese bride, like it was the only thing that defined her. Let them. She knew who she was now. She was Lian Vance. She'd saved her family from a flooding creek and a greedy businessman. She'd turned a dying ranch into a home. She'd taken broken people and helped make them whole. And in the vast, unforgiving frontier where only the strong survived, she'd done more than survive. She'd proven that strength comes in many forms, that family is what you make it, that home is where you choose to fight for. Years later, when people asked Mara about her childhood, she'd tell them about the mother who'd climbed out on a rotting log to save her, the mother who'd stood up to powerful men without flinching, the mother who'd shown her that being different wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. And when they'd ask about the birthmark, about the woman who didn't match her photograph, Mara would smile and say, "She matched exactly what we needed. She matched perfectly." Because that was the truth Lian had learned, the truth she'd proven every day. Worth isn't about matching someone else's expectations. It's about exceeding your own.